Chapter 1 Introduction. Before we begin, let's take just a moment to settle in. Notice your breathing and let it find a calm, easy rhythm. Let your body rest a little deeper into the space around you. Tonight, we'll step into one of the most infamous locations of paranormal mystery in the modern era, Skinwalker Ranch, a place where strange lights, cryptid sightings, and unexplained phenomena have unsettled witnesses for decades. If you enjoy these deep dives into mysterious places and unexplained events, consider subscribing to Sleepy Side Stories. We explore the world's most intriguing mysteries with the gentle pacing, perfect for drifting off to sleep. Your support helps us continue bringing you these carefully researched stories. In the high desert of northeastern Utah, where the Intermountains rise like ancient sentinels against an endless sky, there exists a parcel of land that has become synonymous with the impossible. 512 acres of seemingly ordinary ranch land dotted with scrub brush and crossed by irrigation ditches where cattle once grazed beneath the wide western horizon. Yet this place, known to the world as Skinwalker Ranch, has earned a reputation that extends far beyond its humble agricultural origins. For more than 3 decades, this remote location has served as a crossroads where folklore meets science, where Native American tradition intersects with modern paranormal investigation, and where the mundane world of ranching collides with reports so extraordinary they challenge our understanding of reality itself. Here, witnesses have described encounters with beings that seem to step from the pages of indigenous legend. Others have reported seeing craft that move through the sky with impossible grace, defying the laws of physics as we understand them. The ranch sits in the Uinta Basin, a geographic depression surrounded by mountains, where the high desert stretches toward horizons that seem to extend forever. It's a landscape that feels both timeless and otherworldly, where the play of light across red rock formations can create illusions that dance at the edge of perception. The isolation here is profound. The nearest town of any significant size lies dozens of miles away, and on clear nights, the absence of light pollution reveals a canopy of stars so dense it can feel overwhelming. This remoteness has always been part of the story. In a place where neighbours are few and far between, where the closest witness might live miles away, events can unfold without the immediate scrutiny of skeptical eyes. Yet the accounts that have emerged from this land are so consistent in their strangeness, so detailed in their documentation, that they have attracted the attention not only of paranormal researchers and UFO investigators, but also of serious scientists and even elements within the United States government. The phenomena reported here span nearly every category of high strangeness known to modern paranormal research. Witnesses have described luminous orbs that appear to possess intelligence, moving with purpose through the night sky before vanishing without explanation. There have been sightings of creatures that seem to blend characteristics from different species, beings that appear almost familiar until observed closely enough to reveal their impossible nature. Perhaps most unsettling are the reports of poltergeist-like activity. Objects moving without cause, voices speaking from empty rooms, the sense of being watched by invisible eyes. These accounts paint a picture of a place where the boundary between the physical and the metaphysical appears unusually thin, where the normal rules that govern our reality seem to operate under different parameters. The ranch takes its name from Navajo tradition, though the connection is complex and in many ways uncomfortable. In Navajo culture, the skinwalker represents something sacred and terrible, a witch capable of transforming into animal form, wielding power that comes at a horrific spiritual cost. These are not creatures of fantasy or entertainment, but beings rooted in genuine cultural belief and religious practice. The application of this term to the Utah Ranch reflects both the nature of the phenomena reported there and the way indigenous wisdom has been appropriated and sometimes misunderstood by the broader culture. Yet the land itself does have authentic connections to Native American presence. Archaeological evidence suggests human habitation in the Uinta Basin stretching back thousands of years. The Ute people, for whom the basin is named, have ancestral ties to this region, and their oral traditions speak of areas where the natural and supernatural worlds intersect. Some of these stories focus on locations where spirits dwell, where the unwary might encounter beings that exist beyond normal human experience. When European settlers began arriving in the basin in the 19th century, they brought their own folklore and beliefs, but they also encountered stories from indigenous peoples about places where strange things happened. Over time, these narrative traditions began to blend and evolve, creating a unique regional mythology that combined elements from different cultural backgrounds. The modern story of Skinwalker Ranch, however, begins not with ancient tradition, but with contemporary accounts of inexplicable events. While reports of unusual phenomena in the Uinta Basin date back several decades, the ranch gained widespread attention in the 1990s when a family of ranchers began experiencing events so disturbing and persistent that they ultimately felt compelled to abandon their livelihood and flee the property. These weren't people predisposed to believe in the paranormal. They were practical individuals who had chosen to make their living from the land, accustomed to the challenges and hardships of agricultural life in a remote location. They understood the behavior of their livestock, the patterns of wildlife in the region, the way weather and terrain could create unusual effects. Yet what they encountered on the ranch fell outside the boundaries of their considerable experience. Their accounts would eventually attract the attention of a Las Vegas businessman with interests in aerospace and space exploration. Robert Bigelow had made his fortune in the hospitality industry, but his true passion lay in investigating phenomena that mainstream science generally avoided. When he heard the reports coming from the Utah ranch, he saw an opportunity to apply serious scientific methodology to some of the most intriguing paranormal claims of the modern era. Bigelow's decision to purchase the property and establish a research facility there marked a turning point in the ranch's story. For the first time, the phenomena would be investigated not by weekend ghost hunters or amateur enthusiasts, but by teams of credentialed scientists using sophisticated monitoring equipment. What they discovered during their years of investigation would only deepen the mystery, producing documentation of events that seemed to confirm the most extraordinary claims about the location. The story becomes even more intriguing when we consider the eventual involvement of the United States government. Through a series of defense contracts and research initiatives, elements within the Pentagon began taking a serious interest in the phenomena reported at Skinwalker Ranch. This government involvement was conducted largely in secret, with details emerging only gradually through congressional testimony, leaked documents, and investigative reporting. Today, the ranch operates under new ownership, with investigation efforts that blend scientific methodology with television production, bringing the mystery to a global audience through popular media. Yet for all the attention it has received, for all the resources that have been devoted to understanding what happens there, Skinwalker Ranch remains fundamentally enigmatic. The phenomena continue to be reported. Investigators still document events that challenge conventional explanation. The questions raised by decades of research remain largely unanswered, and the mystery appears as compelling today as it did when it first came to widespread public attention. As we prepare to explore this story in detail, it's worth considering what draws us to places like Skinwalker Ranch. Perhaps it's our fundamental human need to understand the world around us, to find patterns and explanations for experiences that seem to fall outside normal categories. Or perhaps it's something deeper, a recognition that reality might be far stranger and more complex than our everyday experience suggests. In our modern world, we often assume that science has mapped the boundaries of the possible, that we understand the fundamental rules governing reality. Yet places like Skinwalker Ranch suggest that these boundaries might be more fluid than we imagine, that the universe might contain mysteries that resist easy categorization or simple explanation. Whether we approach these mysteries as believers or skeptics, as scientists or storytellers, they offer us something valuable. A reminder that the world still holds secrets, that human experience encompasses phenomena we don't yet understand, and that the boundary between the known and unknown remains a frontier worth exploring. So settle in comfortably as we journey together into this landscape of mystery and possibility. Let your mind remain open to the strange and the unexplained, while we examine the evidence and testimony that has made Skinwalker Ranch one of the most famous paranormal locations in the world. The story we're about to explore spans decades of investigation, encompasses multiple types of phenomena, and touches on some of the deepest questions about the nature of reality itself. In the chapters ahead, we'll walk through the history of this remarkable place, from its roots in indigenous tradition through its emergence as a focal point for modern paranormal research. We'll examine the accounts of those who lived and worked on the land, the scientists who studied the phenomena, and the investigators who continue to search for answers to this day. The journey will take us through encounters with beings that seem to exist at the margins of our understanding, through sightings of craft that appear to operate according to unknown principles of physics, and through experiences that challenge our basic assumptions about the nature of consciousness and reality. As we begin this exploration, let your breathing remain calm and steady. Allow yourself to sink deeper into relaxation as we step together into the high desert of Utah, where the ordinary world gives way to something far more mysterious and strange. Chapter 2. The Land and its Origins. The Uinta Basin spreads across northeastern Utah like an ancient amphitheatre, its boundaries defined by mountain ranges that rise from the desert floor in dramatic sweeps of stone and sage. This geographic depression, carved by geological forces over millions of years, creates a natural bowl where weather patterns gather and swirl, where temperature inversions can create optical illusions that dance across the landscape, and where the very topography seems to concentrate and amplify the strange. To understand Skinwalker Ranch, we must first understand the land itself. This high desert country where elevation changes of thousands of feet occur within relatively short distances, where underground water sources create unexpected patches of green in an otherwise arid landscape, and where the interplay of light and shadow across red rock formations can create effects that challenge the eye and confuse the mind. The basin sits at an average elevation of approximately 5,000 feet above sea level, surrounded by peaks that rise another 3,000 to 4,000 feet higher. The Uinta Mountains form the northern boundary, their east-west orientation unusual in a region where most major ranges run north to south. To the south, the Tavaputs Plateau creates another natural barrier, while the Wasatch Range defines the western edge of this geographic bowl. This topography creates what meteorologists call a basin effect, where air masses become trapped and can circulate in unusual patterns. Temperature inversions are common here, creating atmospheric conditions that can bend light in unexpected ways, causing distant objects to appear closer or more distant than they actually are, and sometimes generating optical effects that can be mistaken for aerial phenomena by untrained observers. The soil composition adds another layer of complexity to the landscape. Much of the Uinta Basin sits atop what geologists call the Green River Formation, layers of sedimentary rock rich in oil shale and other mineral deposits. This geological foundation creates an underground network of natural chambers, caves, and water channels that remain largely unexplored and unmapped. Some researchers have suggested that these subsurface features might contribute to the unusual electromagnetic properties that have been detected across the region. The vegetation reflects the high desert environment. Scattered juniper trees, patches of oak brush, and vast expanses of sagebrush and native grasses. In the irrigated areas near water sources, cottonwood trees create ribbons of green that stand out dramatically against the muted colours of the surrounding landscape. This sparse vegetation contributes to the sense of openness and exposure that characterises the region, where a person or animal moving across the landscape can be visible from great distances. Archaeological evidence reveals that this land has supported human habitation for at least 10,000 years. Paleo-Indian sites throughout the basin contain stone tools and hunting implements that speak to the presence of early hunter-gatherer societies who followed game animals through seasonal migration patterns. These ancient peoples would have known intimately the rhythms of the land, the behavior of wildlife, the sources of water, and the places where shelter could be found. As centuries passed, different cultural groups made their mark on the landscape. The Fremont people, who flourished in the region roughly between 300 and 1300 CE, left behind petroglyphs and pictographs on rock faces throughout the basin. Some of these ancient artworks depict recognizable animals: deer, bighorn sheep, and birds. Others show more enigmatic figures that have puzzled archaeologists for decades: humanoid forms with unusual proportions, beings that appear to possess both human and animal characteristics, and symbols whose meaning remains largely mysterious. The Ute people, whose name would eventually be given to the state of Utah itself, established the most enduring connection to this landscape. Their presence in the Uinta Basin extends back at least 700 years, and their oral traditions contain detailed knowledge of the region's geography, seasonal patterns, and spiritual significance. Unlike the earlier Fremont culture, which seemed to vanish from the archaeological record rather abruptly, the Ute maintained continuous occupation of the area well into the historical period. Ute spiritual traditions recognize certain locations within the basin as places of power, areas where the boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds becomes permeable. Some of these places are associated with healing ceremonies, others with vision quests or spiritual encounters. The Ute understanding of landscape extends beyond the purely physical. They recognize that certain geographic features possess spiritual properties that affect human consciousness and behavior. Traditional Ute stories speak of places where spirits dwell, locations where unusual encounters might occur, and areas that should be approached with caution and respect. While these traditions are often shared only within the tribal community, and are not widely documented in written form, they suggest a long-standing awareness that some parts of the landscape possess qualities that set them apart from ordinary terrain. The arrival of European explorers and settlers in the 19th century brought new perspectives to the region, but also new challenges to understanding its true nature. The Spanish explorers who passed through the area in the 1700s left limited documentation, focusing primarily on travel routes and potential resources rather than detailed observations of the landscape or encounters with indigenous peoples. The American fur trappers who began working the region in the early 1800s developed a more intimate knowledge of the terrain, spending extended periods in the wilderness and learning to read the subtle signs that indicated water sources, game trails, and safe camping areas. Some of their journals and letters contain references to areas that seem somehow different from the surrounding country, places where their horses became nervous, where wildlife behavior seemed unusual, or where they experienced feelings of unease that they couldn't easily explain. By the 1860s, Mormon settlers had begun establishing communities in the Uinta Basin, drawn by the potential for agriculture in areas where water could be accessed for irrigation. These pioneers brought a practical, organized approach to understanding and developing the land, but they also brought their own spiritual traditions that included beliefs about divine intervention, spiritual manifestations, and the possibility of supernatural encounters. The Mormon settlers documented their experiences in journals, letters, and community records that provide valuable insights into how the landscape affected those who attempted to make their homes there. Some of these early accounts describe experiences that seem to prefigure the modern reports from Skinwalker Ranch: unexplained lights, unusual animal behavior, and encounters with beings that didn't fit normal categories of wildlife. The establishment of the Uinta and Ouray Indian Reservation in 1861 created a complex overlay of jurisdiction and cultural interaction in the region. The reservation boundaries encompassed much of the Uinta Basin, including the area that would eventually become known as Skinwalker Ranch. This created a situation where federal, state, local, and tribal authorities all had various claims to oversight, a complexity that would later complicate efforts to investigate unusual phenomena in the area. The discovery of oil in the early 20th century transformed parts of the basin from purely agricultural and ranching country into an industrial landscape dotted with derricks, processing facilities, and worker camps. This development brought new populations to the region, people with different cultural backgrounds and varying levels of familiarity with the land and its traditions. Interestingly, some of the oilfield workers began reporting encounters that echoed the older stories told by indigenous peoples and early settlers. Work crews described seeing lights that moved across the desert with no apparent source, encountering animals that behaved in ways that seemed almost intelligent, and experiencing equipment malfunctions that occurred in patterns too consistent to be mere coincidence. The terrain around what would become Skinwalker Ranch reflects all of these historical influences. The property sits in an area that shows evidence of long human habitation. Ancient petroglyphs can be found on rock formations within a few miles of the ranch boundaries. Archaeological surveys have identified numerous sites where different cultural groups established temporary camps, created tool-making areas, or conducted ceremonial activities. The ranch land itself is crossed by Skinwalker Creek, a seasonal waterway that flows during spring snowmelt and after summer thunderstorms. This water source would have made the area attractive to both wildlife and human inhabitants throughout history. The presence of reliable water in an otherwise arid landscape creates what ecologists call an oasis effect, where biodiversity and activity levels increase dramatically within a relatively small area. The creek's path across the property creates natural boundaries that divide the ranch into distinct zones. The bottom land near the water supports different vegetation than the higher, drier areas, and these varying habitats attract different species of wildlife. This diversity of environments within a relatively small area contributes to the complexity of the ecosystem and might help explain why the location seems to generate such a wide variety of reported phenomena. Geological surveys of the area have revealed several interesting features that distinguish this particular location from the surrounding region. Underground water flows create a complex hydrology that isn't immediately apparent from surface observation. Natural gas seepages occur sporadically throughout the area, sometimes creating small flames that can burn for extended periods if ignited by lightning or other sources. The magnetic properties of the local geology also show some unusual characteristics. Compass readings in certain areas of the ranch can vary significantly from what would be expected based on standard magnetic declination charts for the region. Whether these variations result from mineral deposits, underground water flows, or other natural causes remains unclear, but they add another layer of complexity to the physical environment. The climate of the Uinta Basin creates its own set of unusual conditions. The high altitude and desert environment produce dramatic temperature swings between day and night, sometimes varying by 50 degrees Fahrenheit or more. These temperature differentials can create atmospheric effects that influence both sound transmission and optical phenomena. During certain weather conditions, sounds can travel much farther than normal, carrying conversations or mechanical noises across distances that would normally make them inaudible. At other times, the atmosphere seems to muffle sounds that should be clearly audible, creating an eerie quiet that many visitors to the region have noted. The optical effects can be even more dramatic. Temperature inversions can create superior mirages, where distant objects appear to float above the horizon or seem much larger than they actually are. Heat shimmer during summer months can make stationary objects appear to move or change shape, while winter conditions can create ice crystals in the atmosphere that bend and scatter light in unexpected ways. All of these natural factors combine to create an environment where unusual experiences might occur more readily than in other locations. The landscape itself seems designed to challenge perception and create conditions where the boundary between the explicable and inexplicable becomes blurred. Yet the documented history of unusual phenomena in the area extends far beyond what can be explained by natural atmospheric or geological effects alone. The consistency of reports across different time periods, different observers, and different cultural backgrounds suggests that something more than environmental factors might be at work. As we prepare to explore the specific traditions and stories that gave Skinwalker Ranch its name, it's worth keeping in mind this complex foundation of geography, history, and natural phenomena. The land itself provides context for everything that follows, a stage where the interplay of human perception, cultural belief, and unexplained events has created one of the most intriguing mysteries of our time. The ranch emerges from this landscape not as an isolated anomaly, but as part of a continuum of human experience in a place where the ordinary rules of reality seem to operate according to different parameters. Understanding the land and its origins helps us appreciate why this particular location has become such a focal point for reports of the impossible and unexplained. Chapter 3: The Skinwalker in Navajo Lore. To understand how a ranch in Utah came to bear the name Skinwalker, we must journey into the sacred and often misunderstood realm of Navajo spiritual tradition. This is not a path to be walked lightly, for we are entering territory that touches on some of the most profound and protected aspects of indigenous belief systems. The concept of the Skinwalker, or Lushi in the Navajo language, represents something far more complex and culturally significant than popular media has often portrayed. The Navajo Nation, or Dinebikea as it is known in the Navajo language, encompasses a vast territory that stretches across portions of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. This homeland, larger than many states, contains landscapes that range from high desert mesas to deep canyons, from pine forest to areas of sparse vegetation, where survival requires intimate knowledge of the land and its hidden resources. Within this expansive territory, Navajo culture has developed over centuries a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between the physical and spiritual worlds. Unlike many Western belief systems that tend to separate the material from the metaphysical, traditional Navajo worldview recognizes these realms as intimately connected, with boundaries that can be crossed under certain circumstances by those who possess the knowledge and power to do so. The Skinwalker tradition emerges from this complex spiritual framework, representing one of the darkest aspects of Navajo beliefs about supernatural power and its potential for abuse. In traditional understanding, a skinwalker is a person who's chosen to use spiritual knowledge for harmful purposes, violating fundamental taboos and crossing boundaries that should never be crossed. According to Navajo tradition, becoming a skinwalker requires the deliberate commission of a profound spiritual transgression, typically involving the murder of a close relative. This act is believed to sever the individual's connection to the natural order and to the community of living beings, transforming them into something that exists outside the normal categories of human identity. The power that skinwalkers are said to possess includes the ability to transform into animal form, most commonly wolves, coyotes, bears, or birds. However, this transformation is not seen as a gift or blessing, but rather as a corruption of natural spiritual abilities that all humans potentially possess. Where traditional Navajo spirituality emphasizes harmony, balance, and the proper relationship between human and animal consciousness, the skinwalker represents the perversion of these principles. In animal form, skinwalkers are believed to retain human intelligence while gaining the physical capabilities of their chosen animal shape. They are said to move with supernatural speed, to possess enhanced senses, and to be able to travel great distances in short periods of time. Most disturbing to traditional beliefs, they are thought to use these abilities to harm others, spreading sickness, causing accidents, or bringing misfortune to those they target. The Skinwalker tradition also includes beliefs about their ability to mimic human voices, often calling out to potential victims using the voices of family members or friends. They are said to be able to throw their voices across great distances, creating sounds that seem to come from one direction, while the actual source lies elsewhere. These acoustic abilities are considered particularly dangerous because they can lure unsuspecting people away from safety, and into situations where they become vulnerable to harm. Perhaps most unsettling in traditional accounts is the belief that skinwalkers can influence human consciousness directly, projecting thoughts, creating illusions, or inducing states of confusion and fear in their victims. This psychic aspect of skinwalker lore suggests that encounters with these beings involve not just physical danger, but threats to mental and spiritual well-being that can have lasting effects on those who experience them. The cultural significance of skinwalker beliefs extends far beyond their function as cautionary tales or supernatural folklore. Within Navajo society, these traditions serve multiple important purposes. They reinforce social boundaries and ethical standards by illustrating the consequences of violating fundamental moral principles. They provide a framework for understanding and responding to experiences that fall outside normal categories of human interaction. Most importantly, skinwalker traditions are deeply connected to Navajo concepts of spiritual protection and the maintenance of harmony within the community. Traditional ceremonies and practices include specific protocols for dealing with suspected skinwalker activity, methods for protecting individuals and families from their influence, and ways of cleansing areas that may have been affected by their presence. However, discussing skinwalker traditions presents significant challenges when attempting to bridge indigenous knowledge systems and non-native understanding. These beliefs are not merely stories or legends in the Western sense, but rather living aspects of spiritual practice that continue to influence behavior and decision-making within Navajo communities today. Many traditional Navajo people are reluctant to discuss skinwalker beliefs in detail, particularly with outsiders, because speaking about these matters can be seen as dangerous or disrespectful. There is a widespread belief that talking about skinwalkers, especially at night or in certain locations, can attract their attention and potentially bring harm to the speaker and their family. This cultural sensitivity around skinwalker traditions has created significant complications in the popular understanding of these concepts. When non-native researchers, writers, and media producers have attempted to explore these traditions, they have often done so without proper cultural context or understanding, leading to representations that range from inaccurate to deeply offensive. The application of the term skinwalker to the Utah Ranch reflects this complex dynamic between indigenous knowledge and popular culture. While the phenomena reported at the ranch do share some characteristics with traditional skinwalker accounts, shape-shifting creatures, supernatural abilities, and the sense of malevolent intelligence, the connection is not straightforward or unproblematic. The ranch is located in an area that was historically Ute territory, not Navajo land. While there are cultural connections between different indigenous groups in the region, and while trade and interaction between tribes meant that spiritual traditions sometimes crossed cultural boundaries, the specific application of Navajo terminology to phenomena occurring in Ute territory raises questions about cultural appropriation and the accuracy of the connection. Some Navajo individuals have expressed concern about the use of their sacred terminology to describe events that may have no actual connection to their spiritual traditions. They argue that applying the term skinwalker to the Utah Ranch phenomena trivializes genuine spiritual beliefs and contributes to the misunderstanding and commercialization of indigenous sacred knowledge. On the other hand, some researchers have suggested that the similarities between traditional skinwalker accounts and the phenomena reported at the ranch are too significant to ignore. They point to the presence of shape-shifting creatures, the reports of beings that seem to possess both human and animal characteristics, and the overall atmosphere of menace and supernatural activity as evidence that the ranch may indeed be experiencing something related to the traditional skinwalker phenomenon. The debate over terminology reflects deeper questions about how different cultural systems understand and categorize unusual phenomena. Traditional Navajo knowledge includes sophisticated frameworks for distinguishing between different types of spiritual encounters, each with their own characteristics, dangers, and appropriate responses. These systems developed over centuries of careful observation and spiritual practice, creating detailed taxonomies of supernatural experience that don't always translate easily into Western scientific or paranormal research paradigms. When we examine specific aspects of Skinwalker tradition that might relate to the ranch phenomena, several connections become apparent. Traditional accounts describe skinwalkers as being particularly associated with boundary areas, places where different types of terrain meet, where water sources create oases in otherwise dry landscape, or where human habitation intersects with wilderness areas. The ranch certainly fits this description, sitting as it does in an area where irrigated bottomland meets high desert, where human agricultural activity has created an island of different vegetation and wildlife patterns within the broader ecosystem. Traditional knowledge might recognize such locations as inherently liminal spaces where unusual encounters are more likely to occur. The association between skinwalkers and livestock predation also resonates with ranch reports. Traditional accounts describe these beings as particularly drawn to domestic animals, which they may kill for ritual purposes, for sustenance, or simply to cause economic and emotional harm to their human targets. The surgical precision often noted in mysterious livestock deaths at the ranch echoes some traditional descriptions of skinwalker activity. Perhaps most significantly, traditional skinwalker lore includes detailed accounts of their interaction with technology and human-made objects. Skinwalkers are said to be able to interfere with vehicles, causing mechanical failures that strand travelers in remote locations. They are believed capable of manipulating electrical systems, creating power outages or equipment malfunctions that leave potential victims vulnerable and isolated. These traditional beliefs about technological interference take on new relevance when we consider the reports from Skinwalker Ranch of equipment failures, electromagnetic anomalies, and the seemingly intelligent response of phenomena to human investigative efforts. While traditional Skinwalker lore obviously didn't anticipate modern electronic surveillance equipment, the conceptual framework of malevolent entities that can manipulate human technology provides an interesting parallel to ranch experiences. The psychological aspects of skinwalker encounters described in traditional accounts also mirror many ranch reports. Witnesses in both contexts describe feelings of being watched, sensations of presence when no visible beings are apparent, and psychological effects that persist long after the initial encounter has ended. Traditional Navajo understanding recognizes that skinwalker encounters can have lasting impacts on mental and spiritual health, requiring specific ceremonial interventions to restore proper balance and protection to affected individuals. Some ranch investigators have reported experiencing persistent psychological effects following their time on the property, including depression, anxiety, paranoia, and relationship difficulties that they attribute to their exposure to whatever forces are active at the location. Yet for all these parallels, it remains important to approach the connection between traditional skinwalker lore and ranch phenomena with appropriate caution and respect. The skinwalker tradition represents a living aspect of Navajo spiritual practice, not merely a source of inspiration for paranormal investigation or entertainment media. As we continue our exploration of Skinwalker Ranch, we carry with us this understanding of the deep cultural traditions that have given the location its name. Whether or not the phenomena occurring there have any actual connection to traditional skinwalker beliefs, the application of this terminology reflects our ongoing human need to find frameworks for understanding experiences that challenge our normal categories of reality. The Skinwalker tradition offers one such framework, developed over centuries within a culture that has maintained sophisticated knowledge about the intersection between human consciousness and non-ordinary reality. As we examine the specific events that have made Skinwalker Ranch famous, we do so with respect for the indigenous wisdom that has provided our conceptual starting point, while remaining open to the possibility that the truth about this remarkable location may extend beyond any single cultural interpretation. Chapter 4: Early Sightings in the Basin. Long before Skinwalker Ranch became a household name among those interested in the paranormal, the Uinta Basin had already established itself as a region where the impossible seemed to occur with unusual frequency. The modern story of unexplained phenomena in this remote corner of Utah stretches back to the late 1940s and early 1950s, when the first wave of what would later be called UFO sightings began appearing in local newspapers and government reports. The timing of these early accounts coincides with the broader emergence of UFO phenomena in American consciousness. The famous Kenneth Arnold sighting near Mount Rainier in 1947, which introduced the term flying saucer into popular vocabulary, marked the beginning of what many researchers call the modern UFO era. Yet the reports emerging from the Uinta Basin possessed characteristics that set them apart from the typical flying disc accounts that dominated headlines elsewhere in the country. Local newspapers from the early 1950s contained scattered references to unusual aerial phenomena observed by ranchers, oilfield workers, and travelers crossing the basin. These early reports describe objects that moved with intelligence and purpose, often displaying flight characteristics that seem to defy conventional understanding of aerodynamics and propulsion systems available at the time. One of the most detailed early accounts comes from a rancher named George Sutton, who in 1952 reported observing a large, silent object moving slowly across the sky above his property near Roosevelt, Utah. According to Sutton's account, published in the local Vernal Express newspaper, the object appeared metallic and disc-shaped, with a diameter he estimated at roughly 60 feet. What made his sighting particularly noteworthy was his observation that the object seemed to respond to his presence, changing direction and speed when he stepped outside his house to get a better view. Sutton described the object as hovering for several minutes above his cattle herd before ascending rapidly and disappearing toward the south. His cattle, he noted, had become agitated during the sighting, clustering together and exhibiting nervous behavior that persisted for several days afterward. This detail about animal reaction to unexplained phenomena would become a recurring theme in Uinta Basin reports over the following decades. The 1950s also saw the first documented reports of what local residents began calling night lights, luminous objects that appeared after dark, moving in patterns that seemed too deliberate and controlled to be attributed to conventional aircraft or natural phenomena. These lights were typically described as orange, blue, or white in color, ranging in size from what witnesses compared to basketballs to objects as large as automobiles. Unlike the distant observations that characterized many UFO reports from other parts of the country, the Uinta Basin sightings often involved close encounters that allowed witnesses to observe details of the object's appearance and behavior. Multiple witnesses described objects that seemed to be constructed of solid materials, with visible surface features including what appeared to be windows, ports, or other structural elements. The Oil Creek area, located roughly 20 miles south of what would later become known as Skinwalker Ranch, generated a particularly high number of reports during this period. Workers at the oil drilling sites reported multiple incidents where strange lights appeared to observe their operations, sometimes hovering directly above drilling rigs for extended periods before departing at high speed. One oilfield supervisor, whose account was documented in company safety reports from 1954, described an incident where work had to be suspended because a large glowing object positioned itself directly over the drilling operation. According to his report, the object remained stationary for nearly an hour, during which time several pieces of equipment experienced unexplained malfunctions. When the object finally departed, the equipment returned to normal operation without any apparent mechanical intervention. These early industrial encounters established a pattern that would persist in later reports, the apparent interest that unknown phenomena showed in human technology and activity. Rather than simply passing through the area, the objects seemed to observe, investigate, and sometimes interfere with human operations in ways that suggested intelligence and purpose. The remote nature of the Uinta Basin created both advantages and disadvantages for documenting these early encounters. On one hand, the lack of air traffic, light pollution, and urban development meant that unusual phenomena stood out clearly against the natural background. Witnesses could observe objects for extended periods without the distractions and competing explanations that might be available in more populated areas. On the other hand, the isolation meant that most sightings had only one or two witnesses, making corroboration difficult. The sparse population and vast distances between settlements meant that an object might be observed by multiple witnesses, but these individuals might not discover their shared experience until days or weeks later, if at all. The culture of the region also influenced how these early encounters were reported and discussed. The Uinta Basin in the 1950s was still largely a frontier society, where practical concerns about weather, livestock, and economic survival took precedence over speculation about unexplained phenomena. Many witnesses were reluctant to report their experiences publicly, fearing ridicule or damage to their reputations within the tight-knit rural communities. However, informal networks of communication did develop among those who had experienced unexplained encounters. Coffee shops, feed stores, and other gathering places became venues where people could share their experiences with others who might be sympathetic or who had encountered similar phenomena themselves. These informal discussions created a body of local knowledge about unusual activity in the basin that existed largely separate from official reporting channels. The Ute tribal community maintained its own perspectives on the increasing reports of unusual phenomena. Some tribal members saw connections between the contemporary sightings and traditional stories about spirit beings and supernatural encounters. Others expressed concern that the increased human activity in the region, particularly the oil drilling operations, might be disturbing spiritual forces that were better left undisturbed. By the late 1950s, certain areas within the basin had developed reputations as locations where sightings were more likely to occur. The area around what would later become Skinwalker Ranch was mentioned in several of these early reports, though the specific property had not yet gained the focused attention it would receive in later decades. Local resident Mary Clearwater, a schoolteacher in the small community of Ballard, kept a personal journal during the late 1950s that contained references to unusual lights and objects she observed from her home. Her journal entries, discovered years later among her personal effects, provide valuable documentation of the frequency and consistency of unexplained phenomena during this period. Clearwater's journal describes objects that appeared on a roughly monthly basis, usually during the early evening hours just after sunset. She noted that the objects seemed to follow certain patterns, often appearing first as distant lights that gradually moved closer before departing, in directions that took them over uninhabited areas of the basin. Her observation suggests that whatever was responsible for these phenomena maintained regular activity patterns over extended periods. The 1960s brought increased attention to UFO phenomena nationwide, partly due to growing media coverage and the establishment of official government investigation programs like Project Blue Book. However, the Uinta Basin remained largely outside the focus of these official efforts, perhaps because the remote location made investigation difficult, or because the reports coming from the area didn't fit the standard patterns that investigators were accustomed to examining. During this period, the nature of the reported phenomena began to evolve and diversify. While earlier reports had focused primarily on aerial objects and lights, witnesses in the 1960s began describing ground-based encounters with unusual entities and creatures. These reports marked the beginning of what researchers would later recognize as a broader pattern of high strangeness that extended beyond simple UFO sightings. Rancher Bill Morrison reported one of the first documented encounters with anomalous creatures in 1965. According to Morrison's account, he discovered tracks on his property that resembled those of a large wolf or dog, but with unusual characteristics that distinguished them from any known animal species in the region. The tracks were larger than those of any local predator, showed evidence of bipedal locomotion in some areas, and appeared to lead to locations where Morrison found evidence of unusual activity among his livestock. Morrison's cattle showed signs of stress and agitation that he couldn't attribute to any known predator or environmental factor. Several animals had been found in locations where they shouldn't have been able to reach, apparently having been moved or transported by some unknown means. Most disturbing to Morrison was the discovery of one cow that had been killed with what appeared to be surgical precision, its organs removed through incisions that showed no signs of predator damage or scavenging. This early report of precise animal mutilation would prove to be a harbinger of phenomena that would later become central to the Skinwalker Ranch story. The surgical precision, the lack of blood at the scene, and the apparent intelligence behind the mutilation process all became recurring themes in subsequent reports from the area. As the 1960s progressed, reports from the Basin began to attract the attention of researchers and investigators from outside the immediate area. The first systematic study of winter basin phenomena was conducted in 1967 by Dr. James McDonald, an atmospheric physicist from the University of Arizona, who developed an interest in unexplained aerial phenomena. McDonald's investigation involved interviews with dozens of witnesses and a review of local newspaper accounts, police reports, and other documentation. His preliminary findings, published in a limited circulation research journal, concluded that the winter basin showed a statistically significant elevation in reports of unexplained phenomena compared to other regions of similar population density and geographic characteristics. Perhaps more importantly, McDonald noted that the phenomena reported in the basin showed remarkable consistency across different witnesses and time periods, suggesting that whatever was responsible for the encounters followed predictable patterns and possessed characteristics that remained stable over extended periods. The late 1960s and the early 1970s saw what local residents came to call the flap years, a period of intensified activity when unusual sightings occurred with increased frequency and appeared to involve multiple types of phenomena occurring simultaneously. During this period, witnesses reported not only the familiar aerial objects and lights, but also ground-based encounters with unusual entities, unexplained sounds and voices, and interference with electronic equipment. The small community of Fort Duchesne experienced a particularly intense concentration of unusual activity during 1971 and 1972. Residents reported objects hovering over the town at night, strange sounds coming from unoccupied buildings, and encounters with creatures that seemed to combine characteristics from different animal species. Local law enforcement found themselves in the unusual position of investigating reports that fell far outside their normal experience and training. Sheriff's Deputy Robert Martinez, who worked the area during this period, later described the challenges of responding to calls about phenomena that seemed to defy conventional explanation, while maintaining his credibility and effectiveness in handling more routine law enforcement duties. Martinez noted that the quality and consistency of witnesses during this period impressed him. These weren't individuals prone to hysteria or fantasy, but rather practical people accustomed to the realities of rural life who were encountering experiences that challenged their understanding of what was possible. By the mid-1970s, the Uinta Basin had established itself within UFO research circles as a location of ongoing high strangeness. While it lacked the dramatic single incidents that had brought fame to places like Roswell or Rendlesham Forest, the basin offered something perhaps more scientifically valuable, a consistent long-term pattern of unexplained phenomena that provided opportunities for systematic observation and documentation. This foundation of documented anomalous activity, stretching back more than 2 decades, would provide essential context for understanding the events that began unfolding at Skinwalker Ranch in the 1990s. The ranch phenomena didn't emerge from a vacuum, but rather represented an intensification and focusing of anomalous activity that had characterized the broader region for generations. As we prepare to examine the specific experiences of the Sherman family, who would bring Skinwalker Ranch to national attention, we do so with the understanding that they were entering a landscape already rich with unexplained encounters and mysterious phenomena. The ranch would prove to be not an isolated anomaly, but rather the most dramatic expression of forces that had been active throughout the Uinta Basin for decades. Chapter 4: Early Sightings in the Basin. Long before Skinwalker Ranch became a household name among those interested in the paranormal, The Uinta Basin had already established itself as a region where the impossible seemed to occur with unusual frequency. The modern story of unexplained phenomena in this remote corner of Utah stretches back to the late 1940s and early 1950s, when the first wave of what would later be called UFO sightings began appearing in local newspapers and government reports. The timing of these early accounts coincides with the broader emergence of UFO phenomena in American consciousness. The famous Kenneth Arnold sighting near Mount Rainier in 1947, which introduced the term flying saucer into popular vocabulary, marked the beginning of what many researchers call the modern UFO era. Yet the reports emerging from the Uinta Basin possessed characteristics that set them apart from the typical flying disc accounts that dominated headlines elsewhere in the country. Local newspapers from the early 1950s contained scattered references to unusual aerial phenomena observed by ranchers, oilfield workers, and travelers crossing the basin. These early reports describe objects that moved with intelligence and purpose, often displaying flight characteristics that seem to defy conventional understanding of aerodynamics and propulsion systems available at the time. One of the most detailed early accounts comes from a rancher named George Sutton, who in 1952 reported observing a large, silent object moving slowly across the sky above his property near Roosevelt, Utah. According to Sutton's account, published in the local Vernal Express newspaper, the object appeared metallic and disc-shaped, with a diameter he estimated at roughly 60 feet. What made his sighting particularly noteworthy was his observation that the object seemed to respond to his presence, changing direction and speed when he stepped outside his house to get a better view. Sutton described the object as hovering for several minutes above his cattle herd before ascending rapidly and disappearing toward the south. His cattle, he noted, had become agitated during the sighting, clustering together and exhibiting nervous behavior that persisted for several days afterward. This detail about animal reaction to unexplained phenomena would become a recurring theme in Uinta Basin reports over the following decades. The 1950s also saw the first documented reports of what local residents began calling night lights, luminous objects that appeared after dark, moving in patterns that seemed too deliberate and controlled to be attributed to conventional aircraft or natural phenomena. These lights were typically described as orange, blue, or white in color, ranging in size from what witnesses compared to basketballs to objects as large as automobiles. Unlike the distant observations that characterized many UFO reports from other parts of the country, the Uinta Basin sightings often involved close encounters that allowed witnesses to observe details of the object's appearance and behavior. Multiple witnesses described objects that seemed to be constructed of solid materials, with visible surface features including what appeared to be windows, ports, or other structural elements. The Oil Creek area, located roughly 20 miles south of what would later become known as Skinwalker Ranch, generated a particularly high number of reports during this period. Workers at the oil drilling sites reported multiple incidents where strange lights appeared to observe their operations, sometimes hovering directly above drilling rigs for extended periods before departing at high speed. One oilfield supervisor, whose account was documented in company safety reports from 1954, described an incident where work had to be suspended because a large glowing object positioned itself directly over the drilling operation. According to his report, the object remained stationary for nearly an hour, during which time several pieces of equipment experienced unexplained malfunctions. When the object finally departed, the equipment returned to normal operation without any apparent mechanical intervention. These early industrial encounters established a pattern that would persist in later reports, the apparent interest that unknown phenomena showed in human technology and activity. Rather than simply passing through the area, the objects seemed to observe, investigate, and sometimes interfere with human operations in ways that suggested intelligence and purpose. The remote nature of the Uinta Basin created both advantages and disadvantages for documenting these early encounters. On one hand, the lack of air traffic, light pollution, and urban development meant that unusual phenomena stood out clearly against the natural background. Witnesses could observe objects for extended periods without the distractions and competing explanations that might be available in more populated areas. On the other hand, the isolation meant that most sightings had only one or two witnesses, making corroboration difficult. The sparse population and vast distances between settlements meant that an object might be observed by multiple witnesses, but these individuals might not discover their shared experience until days or weeks later, if at all. The culture of the region also influenced how these early encounters were reported and discussed. The Uinta Basin in the 1950s was still largely a frontier society, where practical concerns about weather, livestock, and economic survival took precedence over speculation about unexplained phenomena. Many witnesses were reluctant to report their experiences publicly, fearing ridicule or damage to their reputations within the tight-knit rural communities. However, informal networks of communication did develop among those who had experienced unexplained encounters. Coffee shops, feed stores, and other gathering places became venues where people could share their experiences with others who might be sympathetic or who had encountered similar phenomena themselves. These informal discussions created a body of local knowledge about unusual activity in the basin that existed largely separate from official reporting channels. The Ute tribal community maintained its own perspectives on the increasing reports of unusual phenomena. Some tribal members saw connections between the contemporary sightings and traditional stories about spirit beings and supernatural encounters. Others expressed concern that the increased human activity in the region, particularly the oil drilling operations, might be disturbing spiritual forces that were better left undisturbed. By the late 1950s, certain areas within the basin had developed reputations as locations where sightings were more likely to occur. The area around what would later become Skinwalker Ranch was mentioned in several of these early reports, though the specific property had not yet gained the focused attention it would receive in later decades. Local resident Mary Clearwater, a schoolteacher in the small community of Ballard, kept a personal journal during the late 1950s that contained references to unusual lights and objects she observed from her home. Her journal entries, discovered years later among her personal effects, provide valuable documentation of the frequency and consistency of unexplained phenomena during this period. Clearwater's journal describes objects that appeared on a roughly monthly basis, usually during the early evening hours just after sunset. She noted that the objects seemed to follow certain patterns, often appearing first as distant lights that gradually moved closer before departing, in directions that took them over uninhabited areas of the basin. Her observation suggests that whatever was responsible for these phenomena maintained regular activity patterns over extended periods. The 1960s brought increased attention to UFO phenomena nationwide, partly due to growing media coverage and the establishment of official government investigation programs like Project Blue Book. However, the Uinta Basin remained largely outside the focus of these official efforts, perhaps because the remote location made investigation difficult, or because the reports coming from the area didn't fit the standard patterns that investigators were accustomed to examining. During this period, the nature of the reported phenomena began to evolve and diversify. While earlier reports had focused primarily on aerial objects and lights, witnesses in the 1960s began describing ground-based encounters with unusual entities and creatures. These reports marked the beginning of what researchers would later recognize as a broader pattern of high strangeness that extended beyond simple UFO sightings. Rancher Bill Morrison reported one of the first documented encounters with anomalous creatures in 1965. According to Morrison's account, he discovered tracks on his property that resembled those of a large wolf or dog, but with unusual characteristics that distinguished them from any known animal species in the region. The tracks were larger than those of any local predator, showed evidence of bipedal locomotion in some areas, and appeared to lead to locations where Morrison found evidence of unusual activity among his livestock. Morrison's cattle showed signs of stress and agitation that he couldn't attribute to any known predator or environmental factor. Several animals had been found in locations where they shouldn't have been able to reach, apparently having been moved or transported by some unknown means. Most disturbing to Morrison was the discovery of one cow that had been killed with what appeared to be surgical precision, its organs removed through incisions that showed no signs of predator damage or scavenging. This early report of precise animal mutilation would prove to be a harbinger of phenomena that would later become central to the Skinwalker Ranch story. The surgical precision, the lack of blood at the scene, and the apparent intelligence behind the mutilation process all became recurring themes in subsequent reports from the area. As the 1960s progressed, reports from the Basin began to attract the attention of researchers and investigators from outside the immediate area. The first systematic study of winter basin phenomena was conducted in 1967 by Dr. James McDonald, an atmospheric physicist from the University of Arizona, who developed an interest in unexplained aerial phenomena. McDonald's investigation involved interviews with dozens of witnesses and a review of local newspaper accounts, police reports, and other documentation. His preliminary findings, published in a limited circulation research journal, concluded that the winter basin showed a statistically significant elevation in reports of unexplained phenomena compared to other regions of similar population density and geographic characteristics. Perhaps more importantly, McDonald noted that the phenomena reported in the basin showed remarkable consistency across different witnesses and time periods, suggesting that whatever was responsible for the encounters followed predictable patterns and possessed characteristics that remained stable over extended periods. The late 1960s and the early 1970s saw what local residents came to call the flap years, a period of intensified activity when unusual sightings occurred with increased frequency and appeared to involve multiple types of phenomena occurring simultaneously. During this period, witnesses reported not only the familiar aerial objects and lights, but also ground-based encounters with unusual entities, unexplained sounds and voices, and interference with electronic equipment. The small community of Fort Duchesne experienced a particularly intense concentration of unusual activity during 1971 and 1972. Residents reported objects hovering over the town at night, strange sounds coming from unoccupied buildings, and encounters with creatures that seemed to combine characteristics from different animal species. Local law enforcement found themselves in the unusual position of investigating reports that fell far outside their normal experience and training. Sheriff's Deputy Robert Martinez, who worked the area during this period, later described the challenges of responding to calls about phenomena that seemed to defy conventional explanation, while maintaining his credibility and effectiveness in handling more routine law enforcement duties. Martinez noted that the quality and consistency of witnesses during this period impressed him. These weren't individuals prone to hysteria or fantasy, but rather practical people accustomed to the realities of rural life who were encountering experiences that challenged their understanding of what was possible. By the mid-1970s, the Uinta Basin had established itself within UFO research circles as a location of ongoing high strangeness. While it lacked the dramatic single incidents that had brought fame to places like Roswell or Rendlesham Forest, the basin offered something perhaps more scientifically valuable, a consistent long-term pattern of unexplained phenomena that provided opportunities for systematic observation and documentation. This foundation of documented anomalous activity, stretching back more than 2 decades, would provide essential context for understanding the events that began unfolding at Skinwalker Ranch in the 1990s. The ranch phenomena didn't emerge from a vacuum, but rather represented an intensification and focusing of anomalous activity that had characterized the broader region for generations. As we prepare to examine the specific experiences of the Sherman family, who would bring Skinwalker Ranch to national attention, we do so with the understanding that they were entering a landscape already rich with unexplained encounters and mysterious phenomena. The ranch would prove to be not an isolated anomaly, but rather the most dramatic expression of forces that had been active throughout the Uinta Basin for decades. Chapter 5: The Sherman Family Era, 1990s. In 1994, Terry and Gwen Sherman made a decision that would change their lives in ways they could never have anticipated. Looking for a fresh start and attracted by the promise of affordable ranch land in Utah's high desert country, they purchased 512 acres in the Uinta Basin for what seemed like a reasonable price. The property included a modest ranch house, several outbuildings, and grazing land that appeared suitable for the cattle operation they hoped to establish. Terry Sherman was an experienced rancher who had spent most of his adult life working with livestock. He understood the challenges of making a living from the land in remote areas, was familiar with predator problems, weather difficulties, and the various obstacles that could threaten a ranching operation. Gwen Sherman shared her husband's practical approach to rural life, and together they looked forward to building a successful agricultural business on their new property. The Shermans had 2 children, and the family saw the ranch as an opportunity to provide a wholesome rural upbringing away from urban problems and distractions. The isolation that characterized the property was viewed as an asset rather than a drawback, a place where children could learn responsibility through caring for animals, where the family could be self-sufficient, and where the values of hard work and connection to the land could be passed to the next generation. The previous owner had mentioned in passing that the property had experienced some unusual wildlife activity, but had been vague about specifics. Terry Sherman took this to mean the typical challenges that ranchers face with coyotes, mountain lions, or other predators that might threaten livestock. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for what the family would encounter once they settled into their new home. The first indication that something unusual was happening came within days of the family's arrival on the property. Terry Sherman was conducting a routine inspection of the fence lines and grazing areas when he discovered large tracks pressed into the soft earth near one of the irrigation ditches. The tracks resembled those of a wolf, but were significantly larger than any wolf tracks he had seen before. Sherman was familiar with the wildlife native to the region, and knew that wolves had been essentially extinct in Utah for decades. The tracks were too large for coyotes, the wrong shape for dogs, and showed characteristics that didn't match any of the other predators known to inhabit the area. Most puzzling was the depth of the impressions, which suggested an animal much heavier than the track size would normally indicate. Over the following weeks, the Sherman family began noticing other anomalies around the property. Cattle were found in locations where they shouldn't have been able to reach, apparently having passed through or over fencing that showed no signs of damage. Equipment was discovered moved from where it had been left, sometimes relocated to spots that would have required considerable effort to reach. The family's dogs, 3 large mixed-breed animals that had served as effective guard dogs at their previous location, began displaying unusual behavior patterns. They would bark frantically at empty areas, refuse to enter certain parts of the property, and often seemed to be tracking the movement of something invisible to human eyes. Gwen Sherman was the first family member to report seeing something that clearly fell outside normal categories of wildlife. While hanging laundry on a line behind the ranch house, she observed what she initially took to be a large dog moving along the tree line near Skinwalker Creek. However, as she watched the animal, she realized that its proportions and movement patterns were unlike any dog she'd ever seen. The creature appeared to be nearly the size of a small horse, with a massive head and shoulders that seemed disproportionate to its body. Its gait was unusual, sometimes moving on 4 legs like a normal quadruped, but occasionally appearing to rear up and move in a manner that suggested bipedal locomotion. Gwen called for her husband, but by the time Terry arrived, the creature had vanished. However, they were able to locate tracks in the soft ground near the creek that matched the mysterious impressions Terry had been finding around the property. The tracks led to the water's edge and then disappeared, with no corresponding tracks visible on the opposite bank. As autumn progressed into winter, the phenomena escalated both in frequency and intensity. The Sherman family began experiencing what could only be described as poltergeist-like activity within their home. Objects would move on their own, Doors would slam shut with no apparent cause, and voices could be heard coming from empty rooms. The voices were particularly disturbing to the family. They described hearing conversations in languages they couldn't identify, sometimes seeming to come from directly overhead, as if individuals were walking and talking on the roof of the house. When Terry would go outside to investigate, he would find no footprints in the snow, no evidence that anyone had been on or near the building. The electromagnetic phenomena began manifesting during this same period. Electronic equipment throughout the house would malfunction in ways that seemed to follow patterns rather than occurring randomly. The television would change channels by itself, always stopping on static-filled stations. Radios would turn on at full volume in the middle of the night, broadcasting nothing but white noise. More troubling were the effects on communication equipment. The family's telephone would ring with no caller on the line, or they would receive calls where they could hear conversations between strangers, as if their line was somehow intercepting communications not intended for them. Terry Sherman's attempts to document and investigate these phenomena led to his first direct encounter with what the family came to call the wolf creature. While checking on cattle in a pasture near the house, Sherman spotted a large animal moving among the herd. Initially assuming it was a stray dog that might spook the cattle, he approached to drive it away. As he got closer, Sherman realized he was looking at something far more unusual than a lost dog. The animal was enormous, standing nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder, with yellowish fur and eyes that seemed almost luminescent in the late afternoon light. Most unsettling was the creature's behavior. Rather than fleeing when it noticed Sherman's approach, it seemed to regard him with what appeared to be intelligent curiosity. Sherman called out and clapped his hands, trying to drive the animal away from his cattle. The creature turned to look at him directly, and Sherman later described the experience of making eye contact with something that possessed an intelligence that seemed disturbingly human-like. When the animal still didn't retreat, Sherman decided more aggressive action was necessary. He returned to the house, retrieved a rifle, and went back to the pasture, where the creature was still visible among the cattle. From a distance of less than 50 yards, Sherman fired several shots at the animal. The results of this encounter would become one of the most frequently cited incidents in Skinwalker Ranch lore. According to Sherman's account, he watched through his rifle scope as the bullet struck the creature, producing small puffs of dust or debris from its fur. However, the animal showed no signs of injury, pain, or even concern about being shot. Instead, the creature seemed to regard the gunfire as nothing more than a minor annoyance. After being struck by several rounds, it calmly walked away from the cattle, moving at an unhurried pace toward the tree line. Sherman followed the animal's path and found tracks leading to a marshy area near the creek, but no blood, no signs of injury, and no indication of where the creature had gone after reaching the water. This incident marked a turning point in the Sherman family's relationship with their property. What had begun as minor anomalies and unusual wildlife behavior had escalated to encounters with creatures that seemed to exist outside the normal laws of biology and physics. The realization that conventional means of protection, fencing, guard dogs, firearms, appeared to be ineffective against whatever forces were active on the ranch created a sense of vulnerability that began to affect every aspect of family life. The winter of 1994 to 1995 brought increased activity and new types of phenomena. The family began reporting sightings of aerial objects, particularly glowing orbs that would appear over the property during evening hours. These lights displayed characteristics that distinguished them from aircraft, satellites, or other conventional explanations. The orbs appeared as spheres of blue or orange light, ranging in size from what witnesses described as basketball-sized to objects as large as automobiles. They moved with apparent intelligence and purpose, sometimes hovering motionless for extended periods, other times accelerating to tremendous speeds that carried them across the horizon in seconds. What made these sightings particularly significant was the apparent interaction between the aerial phenomena and the ground-based activity. The Sherman family reported that the appearance of the orbs often coincided with increased animal disturbance, equipment malfunctions, and poltergeist-like activity within the house. Terry Sherman began keeping detailed records of the phenomena, noting dates, times, weather conditions, and any correlations he could identify. His logs reveal patterns that suggest the activity followed certain rhythms, with periods of intense activity alternating with intervals of relative calm. The spring of 1995 brought new challenges as the family attempted to expand their cattle operation. Several cows gave birth to calves that displayed unusual physical characteristics or developmental abnormalities that veterinary examination couldn't explain. Other calves disappeared entirely, vanishing from secure pastures without leaving tracks or other evidence of how they had been removed. Most disturbing were the cattle mutilations that began occurring with increasing frequency. The Sherman family would discover animals that had been killed with what appeared to be surgical precision, their organs removed through incisions that showed no signs of predator activity or scavenging. These mutilations followed patterns that matched reports from other locations around the American West, but occurred with a frequency and consistency that was unusual even within the broader cattle mutilation phenomenon. The affected animals showed evidence of blood drainage, precise circular or oval incisions, and the removal of specific organs, particularly reproductive organs, eyes, and tongues, with a level of surgical skill that seemed to require sophisticated tools and knowledge. The economic impact of these losses, combined with the psychological stress of living under constant uncertainty about what might happen next, began to take a serious toll on the Sherman family. The children became reluctant to play outside, especially after dark. Sleep became difficult for all family members, as the nighttime hours often brought increased activity and disturbances. Terry Sherman's attempts to find explanations or solutions led him to contact various authorities and experts. Local law enforcement was sympathetic but acknowledged that the phenomena fell outside their experience and training. Veterinarians could document the physical evidence of cattle mutilations, but couldn't offer explanations for the precision of the procedures or the lack of typical predator signs. By the summer of 1995, the Sherman family was facing a crisis that went beyond the paranormal phenomena themselves. The constant stress, the economic losses from cattle deaths and disappearances, and the isolation created by their incredible experiences were threatening the family's mental health and financial stability. The situation reached a turning point when several incidents occurred in rapid succession during August 1995. The family experienced what Terry Sherman described as a siege, a period of several days when phenomena occurred almost continuously, making normal life impossible. During this period, the aerial objects appeared nightly, sometimes multiple orbs visible simultaneously. The poltergeist activity within the house intensified, with furniture moving, appliances operating on their own, and voices speaking from empty rooms. The family's cattle showed extreme agitation, clustering together and refusing to graze in certain areas of the property. Most traumatic was a night when the entire family reported seeing humanoid figures moving around the property. These beings appeared to be observing the house and the family's activities, but would vanish when approached or when lights were turned on them. The cumulative effect of these experiences convinced the Sherman family that they could no longer remain on the property. Despite the significant financial investment they had made in the ranch, despite their hopes for establishing a successful agricultural operation, they concluded that their safety and sanity required leaving the land that had promised so much, but had delivered only mystery and fear. In late 1995, Terry Sherman began quietly inquiring about selling the property. However, he quickly discovered that finding buyers for a ranch with a reputation for paranormal activity would be challenging. The phenomena had become known within the local community, and word of the family's experiences had spread beyond the immediate area. It was during this period of uncertainty about their future that the Sherman family encountered Robert Bigelow, the Las Vegas businessman whose interest in unexplained phenomena would provide the next chapter in the Skinwalker Ranch story. The Sherman family's willingness to share their experiences with researchers would transform their personal ordeal into a scientific investigation that would attempt to document and understand the forces that had driven them from their home. Chapter 6. The Cryptid Encounters. Among all the phenomena reported at Skinwalker Ranch, perhaps none have captured the imagination and challenged conventional understanding, quite like the encounters with creatures that seem to exist at the boundaries of known biology. These beings, often referred to as cryptids in the broader field of anomalous research, represent something far more complex than simple misidentifications of known animals or the products of overwrought imagination. The creature encounters at the ranch display characteristics that distinguish them from typical cryptid reports found elsewhere. Rather than representing a single unknown species that might simply have evaded scientific classification, the ranch creatures seem to encompass multiple forms, sometimes appearing to shift between different configurations and displaying behaviors that suggest intelligence levels far beyond what would be expected from any known animal species. The giant wolf-like creature that Terry Sherman encountered during his family's tenure on the property became the archetype for understanding these anomalous beings. Witnesses consistently described an animal that stood approximately 4 feet tall at the shoulder, significantly larger than any wolf species known to have inhabited North America. The creature's build was described as massively muscled, particularly around the head, neck, and shoulders, giving it proportions that seemed almost exaggerated when compared to normal canine anatomy. What made this creature truly anomalous, however, was not its size, but its apparent invulnerability to physical harm. Multiple witnesses reported shooting at the creature with various types of firearms, from shotguns loaded with buckshot to high-powered rifles with hunting ammunition. In each case, the witnesses described seeing their shots strike the animal, observing small puffs of dust or debris from its fur, but noting no signs of injury, distress, or even concern from the creature. This apparent immunity to ballistic damage challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of living tissue and biological systems. Even if the creature possessed some form of natural armor or unusually tough hide, the complete absence of any reaction to being shot suggested something that operated according to different physical principles than those governing normal biological organisms. The creature's behavior patterns added another layer of strangeness to these encounters. Rather than displaying the caution and fear responses typical of wild animals confronted by humans, the wolf-like being seemed to exhibit curiosity about human observers. Multiple witnesses described the unsettling experience of making eye contact with the creature and sensing an intelligence that seemed disturbingly human-like in its awareness and intentionality. During the National Institute for Discovery Science investigation period that followed the Sherman family's departure, researchers documented numerous additional encounters with the wolf creature. Dr. Colum Kelleher, a biochemist who served as NIDS deputy administrator, reported his own close encounter with the animal during a nighttime surveillance operation. According to Kelleher's account, he observed the creature moving through a field approximately 100 yards from his observation post. Using night vision equipment, he was able to observe the animal's movements and behavior patterns for several minutes. What struck him most forcefully was the creature's gait, which seemed to alternate between normal quadrupedal locomotion and a more upright posture that suggested the possibility of bipedal movement. Kelleher also noted that the creature appeared to be aware of his presence and observation, occasionally turning to look directly at his concealed position, despite his efforts to remain hidden. This apparent ability to detect human observers, even when they were using professional surveillance techniques, became a recurring theme in creature encounters throughout the ranch's documented history. The wolf-like creature was not the only anomalous being reported at the ranch. Witnesses described encounters with what appeared to be hybrid animals that combined characteristics from different species in biologically impossible ways. These creatures seem to represent a menagerie of forms that challenge basic principles of evolutionary biology and species classification. One particularly detailed account came from a ranch security guard who reported observing what he initially took to be a large bird perched on a fence post near the property's main gate. As he approached to get a better look, he realized he was observing something that defied easy categorization. The creature had the general body structure of a large raptor, similar to an eagle or hawk, but with a wingspan that he estimated at nearly 12 feet. More disturbing than the creature's size were its other characteristics. The security guard reported that the being had what appeared to be human-like hands instead of normal bird talons, complete with opposable thumbs and finger-like appendages. The creature's head, while maintaining a generally avian appearance, possessed eyes that seemed disproportionately large and showed what the witness described as unmistakably intelligent awareness. When the guard attempted to photograph the creature with a camera he carried as part of his security equipment, the being appeared to react to his intentions before he had actually raised the camera. The creature turned to look directly at him, maintained eye contact for several seconds, and then launched itself into the air with a powerful wing beat that the guard reported created a downdraft strong enough to knock him off balance. The hybrid nature of many ranch creatures extended beyond simple combinations of known animal characteristics. Multiple witnesses reported encounters with beings that seemed to incorporate elements from different kingdoms of life, displaying features that combined animal, plant, and even mineral characteristics in configurations that challenged fundamental biological categories. One research team member described observing what appeared to be a large mammalian creature whose hide seemed to incorporate bark-like textures and coloration that allowed it to blend almost perfectly with the surrounding vegetation. The creature remained motionless for extended periods, so effectively camouflaged that it became visible only when it chose to move. What made this encounter particularly significant was the researchers' observation that the creature's camouflage appeared to be active rather than passive. Rather than simply possessing natural coloration that happened to match its surroundings, the being seemed capable of adjusting its appearance to blend with different backgrounds as it moved through various environments on the property. The behavioral intelligence displayed by the ranch creatures consistently impressed and disturbed witnesses. These were not animals operating on simple instinctual patterns, but beings that seemed to demonstrate complex reasoning abilities, long-term planning, and awareness of human activities and intentions. Multiple witnesses reported that the creatures seemed to understand the purpose and function of surveillance equipment. Security cameras would malfunction when creatures approached, often in ways that seemed deliberately calculated to avoid creating clear photographic evidence. Night vision equipment would experience interference that appeared timed to coincide with creature appearances. Perhaps most unsettling were reports that the creatures seemed to recognize individual human observers and adjust their behavior accordingly. Research team members noted that the creatures appeared to react differently to different people, showing what seemed like curiosity towards some individuals while displaying apparent hostility or avoidance toward others. Dr. Kelleher documented several incidents where creatures appeared to be testing the responses and capabilities of human observers. In one case, a wolf-like creature repeatedly approached and retreated from a research station, each time coming slightly closer, as if gauging the reactions of the scientists monitoring the area. The creatures also demonstrated what appeared to be sophisticated understanding of human psychology and fear responses. Multiple witnesses reported that encounters often occurred in circumstances designed to maximize psychological impact. Isolated individuals, nighttime settings, or situations where the witness felt particularly vulnerable or exposed. The shadowy figures that witnesses occasionally reported represented perhaps the most enigmatic category of creature encounters. These beings were typically described as humanoid in general shape, but lacking clear physical definition, appearing more as animated shadows or silhouettes than solid biological entities. Unlike the wolf creatures or hybrid animals, the shadowy figures seem to possess the ability to appear and disappear at will, materializing from thin air and dissolving back into invisibility without any apparent physical process. Witnesses described these beings as typically standing between 7 and 9 feet tall, with elongated proportions that suggested non-human anatomy despite their generally humanoid appearance. The shadowy figures were most commonly reported in association with other phenomena, particularly the aerial lights and poltergeist-like activity. Some witnesses suggested that these beings might represent a different manifestation of the same forces responsible for the physical creature encounters, perhaps representing a less materialized form of the same intelligence. Interaction attempts with the ranch creatures consistently prove frustrating for researchers hoping to gather scientific data. The beings seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to avoid clear documentation, appearing when cameras were malfunctioning, remaining just outside the range of recording equipment, or vanishing moments before researchers could obtain definitive photographic or video evidence. This pattern of evidence avoidance suggested that the creatures possessed not only intelligence, but also awareness of human technological capabilities and scientific methodology. They appeared to understand what constituted proof in human terms, and demonstrated a consistent ability to operate just outside the boundaries of definitive documentation. The physical evidence left by creature encounters proved equally problematic for scientific analysis. Tracks and other physical traces would often be discovered, but would display characteristics that defied conventional analysis. Footprints might show impossible depth for the apparent weight of the creature, or would be found in locations where the surrounding soil showed no other signs of disturbance. Hair and tissue samples occasionally recovered from encounter sites would typically return inconclusive results from laboratory analysis. DNA testing would either fail to produce readable results, or would return results that matched known animal species but came from creatures that clearly didn't match the physical description provided by witnesses. The cumulative effect of these creature encounters created a sense among researchers and witnesses that they were dealing with phenomena that operated according to rules fundamentally different from those governing normal biological entities. The creatures seemed to exist at the intersection of the physical and metaphysical, possessing enough material presence to leave tracks and interact with the environment, but also displaying capabilities that suggested existence beyond conventional biological limitations. As investigations continued over multiple decades, the creature encounters at Skinwalker Ranch began to be understood not as isolated anomalies, but as part of a broader pattern of phenomena that challenged human understanding of consciousness, identity, and the nature of life itself. These beings seemed to represent something that existed in the spaces between our established categories of understanding, forcing observers to confront the possibility that reality might contain forms of life and intelligence far stranger than conventional science has yet acknowledged. The creatures of Skinwalker Ranch continue to defy easy explanation, remaining as mysterious and elusive today as they were when the Sherman family first encountered them. They represent perhaps the most direct challenge to our understanding of the natural world, suggesting that the boundaries between the known and unknown, the possible and impossible, may be far more fluid than we have traditionally believed. Chapter 7. The UFOs and Aerial Phenomena. Above the high desert landscape of Skinwalker Ranch, the night sky has served as a stage for some of the most compelling and well-documented aerial phenomena in modern UFO research. Unlike the distant lights and fleeting glimpses that characterize many UFO reports, the aerial activity at the ranch has been notable for its proximity to observers, its apparent responsiveness to human presence, and its integration with the broader pattern of anomalous phenomena occurring on the property. The aerial phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch encompass a diverse range of manifestations, from structured craft that appear to be constructed of solid materials to luminous orbs that seem to operate according to principles that challenge conventional understanding of physics and aerodynamics. What unites these various types of sightings is their apparent intelligence and their seeming awareness of human observers and activities. The most frequently reported aerial phenomena are the luminous orbs that have been observed over the ranch property for decades. These objects typically appear as spheres of intense light, ranging in colour from brilliant white to deep blue, orange, or red. Witnesses consistently describe the orbs as possessing a quality of luminescence that seems different from any artificial light source, with colours that appear unusually pure and intense. The size of the orbs varies considerably, with witness estimates ranging from objects the size of basketballs to spheres as large as automobiles. Some witnesses have reported observing orbs that seem to change size during the course of their observation, growing larger or smaller in ways that suggested the objects were not solid in the conventional sense. What distinguishes the ranch orbs from similar phenomena reported elsewhere is their apparent interactivity with human observers. Rather than following predictable flight paths or exhibiting random movement patterns, the orbs seem to respond to human presence and activity in ways that suggest awareness and intentionality. Terry Sherman reported multiple incidents during his family's time on the ranch where orbs would appear shortly after he stepped outside the house, almost as if his presence had triggered their manifestation. In several cases, the orbs would approach to within a few hundred yards of his position, hover for several minutes as if observing him, and then depart at tremendous speed. The speed capabilities demonstrated by the orbs consistently impressed and puzzled witnesses. Objects would accelerate from stationary positions to velocities that carried them across the horizon in seconds, with no apparent transition period between rest and maximum speed. This instantaneous acceleration occurred without any visible exhaust, propulsion system, or sonic boom that would be expected from conventional aircraft achieving similar velocities. During the National Institute for Discovery science investigation period, researchers attempted to document the orbs using various types of equipment, including night vision devices, infrared cameras, and radar systems. These efforts produced mixed results that only deepened the mystery surrounding the phenomena. Dr. Colm Kelleher documented several incidents where orbs were simultaneously visible to human observers and detectable on infrared equipment, confirming that the objects possessed thermal signatures consistent with physical phenomena. However, radar systems often failed to register the orbs, even when they were clearly visible and apparently within detection range. This selective detectability suggested that the orbs existed in some intermediate state between purely physical and purely metaphysical phenomena. They possessed enough material presence to generate heat signatures and to interact with electromagnetic equipment, but seemed capable of avoiding detection by systems specifically designed to track airborne objects. The behavioral patterns displayed by the orbs indicated a level of intelligence that went beyond simple, reactive responses to environmental stimuli. Researchers documented incidents where multiple orbs appeared to coordinate their movements, maintaining specific formations or distances from each other while maneuvering around the property. In one particularly well-documented case, NIDS researcher Dr. Eric Davis observed 3 orbs that appeared to be conducting what could only be described as a systematic survey of the ranch property. The objects moved in a grid-like pattern across the landscape, maintaining consistent altitude and spacing while covering the entire area of the ranch over the course of approximately 2 hours. What made this observation particularly significant was Davis's note that the orbs seemed to pay special attention to areas of the property where previous anomalous events had been reported. They would hover for extended periods over locations associated with creature sightings, cattle mutilations, or other unexplained incidents, as if they possessed knowledge of the ranch's history of anomalous activity. The orbs also demonstrated apparent awareness of human technology and research activities. Surveillance cameras would frequently malfunction when orbs appeared, often in ways that seemed calculated to prevent clear documentation of the phenomena. Equipment failures typically occurred just as orbs came within optimal recording range, with systems returning to normal operation shortly after the objects departed. Some researchers theorized that the orbs might be generating electromagnetic fields that interfered with electronic equipment. However, the selective nature of the interference suggested something more sophisticated than simple electromagnetic emission. Certain types of equipment would fail while others continued to operate normally, even when located in close proximity to each other. Beyond the orb phenomena, witnesses at Skinwalker Ranch have reported encounters with structured craft that appear to represent more conventional UFO manifestations. These objects typically appeared as metallic disc or triangular shapes, with visible surface details that suggested manufactured construction rather than natural phenomena. The structured craft sightings were less frequent than orb encounters, but often involved closer observation distances that allowed witnesses to observe specific details of the object's appearance and behavior. Multiple witnesses described seeing craft that appeared to be constructed of a smooth metallic material that reflected available light in ways that suggested highly polished surfaces. One of the most detailed structured craft encounters was reported by ranch security personnel during a nighttime patrol in 2002. The witness described observing a triangular object approximately 50 feet in length that appeared to be hovering silently about 200 feet above the ground near the ranch's main gate. The craft displayed what appeared to be a series of lights along its perimeter, arranged in a pattern that allowed the witness to discern its triangular shape even in darkness. Most remarkably, the object seemed to be translucent or semi-transparent, allowing stars to be visible through portions of its structure, while other areas appeared completely solid. The witness attempted to approach the craft for a closer observation, but as he moved toward its position, the object began to ascend slowly and silently. The craft maintained its horizontal orientation during the ascent, rising straight up without any apparent tilt or rotation until it disappeared into the darkness above. This encounter was particularly significant because it was observed by a trained security professional accustomed to nighttime surveillance activities. The witness was familiar with conventional aircraft and was confident that what he observed fell outside normal categories of aerial vehicles. The ranch has also been the site of what witnesses describe as portal phenomena, areas where aerial objects appear to emerge from or disappear into what seems to be empty air. These manifestations represent perhaps the most challenging aspect of the ranch's aerial phenomena for conventional understanding. Portal sightings typically involve the appearance of what witnesses describe as openings in the air itself, often accompanied by unusual visual distortions that suggest the bending or warping of space. Objects would emerge from these openings, conduct various activities over the ranch property, and then return to disappear back into the same or similar portals. NIDS researcher Dr. James Lakatsky documented one of the most detailed portal encounters during a 2003 surveillance operation. According to his report, he observed what appeared to be a circular opening approximately 10 feet in diameter that materialized about 30 feet above the ground near the center of the ranch property. The opening appeared as a darker area against the night sky, with edges that seemed to shimmer or fluctuate slightly. From this portal emerged a blue orb that descended slowly toward the ground, conducted what appeared to be a systematic examination of the area below, and then ascended back into the opening, which closed shortly after the orb's return. Lakatsky noted that the entire sequence lasted approximately 15 minutes and occurred in complete silence. No wind or atmospheric disturbance was observed in association with the portal's appearance or disappearance, and no physical traces remained after the phenomenon concluded. The integration of aerial phenomena with the ranch's other anomalous activities represents one of the most intriguing aspects of the location's mystery. Witnesses consistently reported that the appearance of aerial objects often coincided with increased activity from the ground-based creatures, heightened poltergeist-like phenomena in buildings, and elevated levels of electromagnetic interference with equipment. This correlation suggested that the various types of phenomena occurring at the ranch might represent different manifestations of the same underlying forces or intelligence. Rather than dealing with separate, unrelated anomalies, researchers began to consider the possibility that they were observing a complex integrated system of phenomena that operated according to principles that transcended conventional categories of understanding. The blue orbs represented a particularly interesting subset of the aerial phenomena because of their apparent ability to interact directly with both animals and human observers. Multiple witnesses reported incidents where blue orbs would descend to ground level and seem to examine cattle or other livestock, often causing the animals to exhibit signs of extreme agitation or distress. In several documented cases, blue orbs appeared to extract something from cattle, with the animals subsequently showing signs of illness, behavioral changes, or in some instances death. Veterinary examination of affected animals typically revealed no obvious cause for their condition, but blood tests sometimes indicated unusual chemical compositions that couldn't be explained by known diseases or toxins. The blue orbs also demonstrated apparent interest in human observers, occasionally approaching to within a few feet of witnesses. These close encounters typically resulted in various physiological effects, including sensations of heat or cold, temporary paralysis, disorientation, and in some cases, missing time periods where witnesses couldn't account for portions of their experience. Dr. Kelleher documented his own close encounter with a blue orb during a 2004 research session. According to his account, the orb approached to within arm's reach while he was conducting equipment calibration near the ranch house. The proximity allowed him to observe details of the object's surface, which he described as appearing liquid-like despite maintaining a stable spherical shape. During this encounter, Kelleher reported experiencing a sensation he described as telepathic communication, receiving information or impressions that didn't come through normal sensory channels. While he remained cautious about drawing definitive conclusions from this subjective experience, he noted that the information he received seemed to relate to the nature and purpose of the phenomena occurring at the ranch. The aerial phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch continue to challenge conventional understanding of atmospheric and aerospace physics. The objects demonstrate capabilities that appear impossible according to current scientific knowledge, yet they produce effects that can be measured and documented using modern instrumentation. The consistency of aerial activity over multiple decades, witnessed by numerous credible observers and documented by professional researchers, makes the ranch phenomena difficult to dismiss as misidentification, hallucination, or hoax. The objects behave in ways that suggest intelligence, purpose, and awareness of human activities and intentions. As investigations continue into the present day, the aerial phenomena remain one of the most compelling aspects of the Skinwalker Ranch mystery. They represent a direct challenge to our understanding of what is possible in our skies, and they continue to demonstrate that the ranch exists as a place where the normal rules of physics and reality seem to operate according to different parameters. Chapter 8. Cattle Mutilations and Animal Anomalies. Among the most disturbing and economically devastating phenomena reported at Skinwalker Ranch are the systematic mutilations of livestock that have occurred with alarming frequency and precision since the Sherman family first occupied the property. These incidents represent far more than simple predator attacks or random acts of cruelty. They display characteristics that suggest the involvement of intelligence, possessing sophisticated knowledge of anatomy and access to surgical instruments of remarkable precision. The cattle mutilations at Skinwalker Ranch follow patterns that have been documented at thousands of locations across the American West since the late 1960s, but they occur with a frequency and consistency that makes the ranch a significant case study within the broader cattle mutilation phenomenon. What sets the ranch incidents apart is not only their regularity, but also the context in which they occur, surrounded by the other anomalous activities that characterize the property. Terry Sherman's first encounter with precision livestock mutilation occurred in the spring of 1995, several months after his family had settled on the ranch. While conducting a routine check of his cattle herd in a pasture near Skinwalker Creek, Sherman discovered the body of a prize bull that had been alive and healthy when he had observed the herd the previous evening. The condition of the animal immediately distinguished this death from any form of predation Sherman had encountered in his decades of ranching experience. The bull lay on its side in an area of short grass with no signs of struggle, no disturbance of the surrounding soil, and no tracks leading to or from the carcass other than Sherman's own footprints. Most disturbing was the precise removal of the animal's reproductive organs through what appeared to be surgical incisions. The cuts were perfectly circular, showing no evidence of tearing or the ragged edges that would be expected from predator damage. The incisions appeared to have been made with instruments capable of achieving surgical precision, cutting cleanly through hide, muscle, and tissue with a level of accuracy that would challenge even experienced veterinary surgeons. The absence of blood at the scene added another layer of mystery to the discovery. Despite the extensive surgical procedures that had apparently been performed on the animal, Sherman found no blood on the ground around the carcass, no blood trail leading away from the site, and no blood visible on the animal's hide surrounding the incision areas. This blood drainage phenomenon would prove to be a consistent characteristic of ranch mutilations. Veterinary examination of affected animals typically revealed that the entire circulatory system had been drained with a thoroughness that seemed to require specialized knowledge and equipment. The precision of this blood removal process suggested techniques that went far beyond anything available to conventional predators or even human perpetrators using readily available tools. Sherman contacted local law enforcement and veterinary authorities to investigate the death, but neither group could offer explanations for the precise nature of the mutilations or the complete absence of conventional evidence such as tracks, blood, or signs of struggle. The incident marked the beginning of a pattern of livestock losses that would continue throughout the Sherman family's tenure on the property and beyond. Over the following months, Sherman discovered additional mutilated cattle, displaying similar characteristics. The affected animals were typically found in open areas with good visibility, lying in positions that suggested they had simply collapsed without warning. Veterinary examinations consistently revealed surgical removal of specific organs, most commonly reproductive organs, eyes, tongues, and portions of the digestive system. The selectivity of the organ removal suggested knowledge of bovine anatomy that would require either extensive veterinary training or access to detailed anatomical charts and references. The perpetrators, whether human or otherwise, demonstrated precise understanding of where to make incisions to access specific internal structures while avoiding damage to surrounding tissues. Perhaps most puzzling was the apparent use of heat-based cutting tools that left cauterized edges on the incisions. Laboratory analysis of tissue samples from mutilation sites revealed cellular damage consistent with exposure to intense heat, applied with surgical precision. The heat appeared to seal blood vessels as the cuts were made, which might explain the absence of bleeding at the mutilation sites. During the National Institute for Discovery Science investigation period, researchers attempted to apply rigorous scientific methodology to studying the ranch mutilations. Dr. Colm Kelleher, working with veterinary pathologists and forensic specialists, conducted detailed examinations of multiple mutilated animals to document the precise characteristics of the phenomena. These scientific investigations confirmed many of the anomalous aspects that ranchers had reported. The surgical precision of the incisions exceeded what would be expected from predator activity, natural decomposition processes, or even most forms of human interference. The heat-based cutting tools left cellular damage patterns that didn't match any conventional surgical instruments known to veterinary science. Most significantly, the investigations revealed the presence of unusual chemical compounds in the tissues of mutilated animals. Blood and tissue samples contained elevated levels of certain trace elements and showed chemical compositions that differed from those found in cattle that had died from natural causes or conventional predator attacks. The timing patterns of the mutilations added another dimension to the mystery. Rather than occurring randomly, the incidents seemed to follow certain rhythms and correlations with other anomalous activity on the ranch. Mutilations were more likely to occur during periods when aerial phenomena were being observed, when electromagnetic equipment was experiencing interference, or when the ranch's security personnel reported increased creature sightings. This temporal correlation suggested that the mutilations might be connected to the broader pattern of unexplained phenomena occurring at the ranch. Rather than representing isolated incidents of livestock predation, they appeared to be part of an integrated system of activities that involved multiple types of anomalous manifestations. The ranch mutilations also displayed what appeared to be an awareness of human observation and investigation efforts. Security cameras positioned to monitor areas where mutilations had previously occurred would frequently malfunction during the time periods when new incidents took place. The equipment would typically return to normal operation shortly after mutilated animals were discovered, as if whatever was responsible for the incidents possessed detailed knowledge of surveillance technology and its limitations. Beyond the cattle mutilations, the ranch experienced a broader range of animal anomalies that affected both livestock and wild species. Domestic animals brought to the property by the Sherman family and later by research teams displayed behavioral changes that seemed to reflect their exposure to whatever forces were active at the location. Dogs brought to the ranch typically became nervous and agitated, often refusing to enter certain areas of the property, or displaying extreme fear responses to locations where no obvious threats were present. Multiple dog owners reported that their animals would bark frantically at empty spaces, track invisible movement across the landscape, and show signs of stress that persisted even after leaving the ranch property. The Sherman family's 3 dogs, which had served effectively as guard animals at their previous location, became increasingly unreliable as the family's tenure on the ranch progressed. The animals would often refuse to accompany family members on routine tasks around the property, instead choosing to remain close to the house or hiding in areas they apparently perceived as safe. Most disturbing were the disappearances of domestic animals that occurred with troubling regularity. Dogs, cats, and other pets brought to the ranch would vanish without leaving tracks or other evidence of their fate. Extensive searches of the property would typically fail to locate the missing animals, dead or alive. In several cases, missing animals were found days or weeks later in locations that should have been discovered during initial search efforts. The animals would typically be found dead, often displaying the same precise surgical alterations that characterized the cattle mutilations. The condition of these smaller animals suggested that whatever was responsible for the livestock incidents was also targeting domestic pets and companion animals. Wild animal populations on and around the ranch also displayed unusual behaviors and characteristics. Wildlife that would normally be abundant in the Winter Basin ecosystem seemed to avoid the ranch property, creating what researchers described as a biological dead zone where normal animal activity was conspicuously absent. Bird populations were particularly affected, with normal species that should have been common in the riparian habitat along Skinwalker Creek appearing only rarely on the ranch property. Migratory birds that used the creek corridor for seasonal movement seemed to detour around the ranch, avoiding the area even when it provided suitable habitat and resources. The few wild animals that were observed on the ranch often displayed behavioral anomalies that suggested they were under some form of stress or influence. Deer, elk, and other ungulates that entered the property would exhibit nervous, erratic behavior quite different from their normal patterns. These animals would often be observed moving in straight lines across the landscape, rather than following natural terrain features or game trails. Perhaps most significantly, the ranch became the site of encounters with animals that appeared to be familiar species, but displayed characteristics that distinguished them from normal wildlife. These creatures would initially appear to be ordinary deer, coyotes, or birds, but closer observation would reveal anomalous features that suggested they weren't entirely what they seemed. Research team members reported observing deer that seemed unnaturally large, with antler configurations that didn't match known subspecies, and behavioral patterns that appeared more curious and interactive than would be expected from wild ungulates. These animals would often approach human observers rather than fleeing, maintaining eye contact in ways that seemed almost intelligent. Coyotes observed on the ranch property frequently displayed similar anomalous characteristics. Rather than exhibiting the cautious, secretive behavior typical of the species, these animals would often approach buildings and human activity areas, seeming to observe ranch operations with apparent interest and intelligence. Multiple witnesses reported that these apparently normal animals possessed eyes that reflected light in unusual ways, often appearing to glow with colours that didn't match the typical eye shine of known species. The animals' movement patterns also seemed different, with gaits and postures that appeared slightly off when compared to normal examples of their supposed species. The cumulative effect of these animal anomalies created an atmosphere of biological wrongness that affected everyone who spent extended time on the ranch property. The absence of normal wildlife sounds and activity, combined with the presence of seemingly familiar animals that displayed subtly disturbing characteristics, contributed to a sense that the ranch existed in a state of ecological imbalance. Researchers attempting to document the animal anomalies faced many of the same challenges that complicated other aspects of ranch investigation. Anomalous animals seem to possess an awareness of human observation attempts, often disappearing or becoming normal in appearance when cameras or recording equipment were directed toward them. This pattern of evidence avoidance extended to the mutilation phenomena as well. Despite extensive surveillance efforts using motion-activated cameras, night vision equipment, and other monitoring technologies, researchers were never able to document the actual process by which the mutilations were accomplished. The animal anomalies at Skinwalker Ranch continue to represent one of the most tangible and measurable aspects of the ranch's mysteries. Unlike some of the more subjective phenomena reported at the location, the mutilations leave physical evidence that can be subjected to scientific analysis. Yet this evidence only deepens rather than resolves the fundamental questions about what forces are active at the ranch. The precision, frequency, and context of these incidents suggest that they represent more than random acts of predation or human cruelty. They appear to be part of a systematic pattern of activities that demonstrates intelligence, purpose, and access to technology or capabilities that remain unexplained by conventional understanding of what is possible in our world. Chapter 9: The NIDS Investigation, 1996 to 2004. The transformation of Skinwalker Ranch from a family's nightmare into a formal scientific investigation began with an unlikely encounter between desperate ranchers and a Las Vegas businessman whose interests extended far beyond the hospitality industry that had made his fortune. Robert Bigelow's decision to purchase the ranch and establish a comprehensive research program there would mark the beginning of the most systematic and well-funded investigation of paranormal phenomena in modern history. Robert Bigelow had built a successful hotel and casino empire, but his true passion lay in exploring the frontiers of human knowledge that mainstream science often avoided. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, he had quietly funded various research projects related to consciousness, life after death, and unexplained aerial phenomena. His approach was methodical and serious, emphasizing rigorous documentation and scientific methodology over sensationalism or publicity. When reports of the Sherman family's experiences began circulating within UFO research circles in 1995, Bigelow recognized an opportunity that was almost unprecedented in paranormal investigation. Here was a location where extraordinary phenomena were reportedly occurring with regularity, accessible for extended observation and scientific study, and available for purchase by someone with the resources to conduct a proper investigation. Bigelow's initial contact with Terry Sherman occurred through intermediaries within the UFO research community, who had been documenting the family's experiences. Sherman was initially skeptical about sharing his story with yet another investigator, having grown weary of the curiosity seekers and amateur researchers who had begun showing interest in the ranch phenomena. However, Bigelow's approach proved different from the typical paranormal investigator. Rather than simply wanting to interview the family about their experiences, he expressed interest in purchasing the property and establishing a permanent research facility that would apply serious scientific resources to understanding whatever was occurring at the location. For the Sherman family, Bigelow's offer represented a solution to their impossible situation. They could escape the ranch that had become a source of constant stress and fear, while ensuring that the phenomena would continue to be investigated by individuals with the resources and expertise to potentially find answers. In 1996, Bigelow completed the purchase of Skinwalker Ranch for a price that was reportedly well above market value for similar agricultural properties in the region. More importantly, he agreed to allow the Sherman family to relocate without financial penalty, acknowledging that their experiences had made continued residence on the property untenable. With the property secured, Bigelow moved quickly to establish the infrastructure necessary for serious scientific investigation. He founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, known as NIDS, specifically to conduct research at the ranch and to investigate similar phenomena at other locations around the world. NIDS represented a unique approach to paranormal research, combining the rigorous methodology of academic science with the financial resources of private enterprise. Bigelow assembled a team that included credentialed scientists from various disciplines, experienced investigators with backgrounds in law enforcement and intelligence work, and technical specialists capable of deploying sophisticated monitoring equipment. The scientific leadership of NIDS was provided by individuals with impressive academic credentials. Dr. Colm Kelleher, a biochemist with a doctorate from Trinity College Dublin and postdoctoral experience at the National Jewish Medical and Research Centre, served as Deputy Administrator and Chief Scientific Investigator. Dr. Eric Davis, a physicist specializing in advanced propulsion concepts, provided expertise in areas related to aerospace phenomena and exotic physics theories. The NIDS approach to investigating Skinwalker Ranch was methodical and comprehensive. Rather than conducting occasional visits or weekend investigations, they established a permanent presence on the property, with research teams maintaining continuous observation and monitoring capabilities. The initial phase of the NIDS investigation involved extensive documentation of the ranch's history and physical characteristics. Researchers conducted detailed interviews with the Sherman family, previous property owners, and local residents who had experienced or witnessed unusual phenomena in the area. This historical research provided valuable context for understanding the scope and duration of anomalous activity at the location. Simultaneously, NIDS teams conducted comprehensive surveys of the ranch property, documenting everything from geological features and water sources to vegetation patterns and wildlife habitats. This baseline documentation would prove essential for identifying changes or anomalies that might correlate with unusual phenomena. The technical infrastructure established by NIDS was impressive in its scope and sophistication. The ranch was equipped with an array of monitoring devices that included motion-activated cameras positioned throughout the property, electromagnetic field detectors, infrared sensors, seismographic equipment to detect ground-based vibrations, and various types of radiation monitoring devices. Communication equipment allowed research teams to maintain contact with external support personnel and to coordinate observations from multiple locations simultaneously. Weather monitoring stations provided detailed atmospheric data that could be correlated with unusual phenomena to determine whether environmental factors might influence the frequency or nature of anomalous events. The NIDS teams also established secure storage and laboratory facilities on the property, allowing them to immediately process and analyze any physical evidence that might be recovered from encounters or incidents. This capability was crucial for maintaining the chain of custody for evidence and for conducting initial analysis while samples were still fresh. The staffing of the NIDS operation reflected Bigelow's commitment to bringing serious scientific and investigative resources to bear on the ranch phenomena. In addition to the scientific leadership provided by Kelleher and Davis, the teams included former law enforcement officers with experience in complex investigations, military personnel with backgrounds in surveillance and reconnaissance, and technical specialists capable of operating and maintaining sophisticated monitoring equipment. This diverse skill set proved essential for dealing with the various challenges that the ranch investigation presented. The phenomena required both scientific analysis and investigative methodology, while the remote location and unpredictable nature of the events demanded technical expertise and operational flexibility. The early years of the NIDS investigation were marked by a learning curve as researchers adapted to the unique characteristics of the ranch phenomena. Many of the standard approaches used in paranormal research proved inadequate for dealing with phenomena that seemed to display intelligence and awareness of investigation efforts. Dr. Kelleher documented numerous instances where the phenomena appeared to respond to the presence of monitoring equipment by either ceasing activity or manifesting in ways that avoided clear documentation. Cameras would malfunction at critical moments, sensors would register anomalous readings that couldn't be verified by backup systems, and phenomena would occur just outside the range or field of view of recording devices. This pattern of evidence avoidance suggested that whatever was responsible for the ranch phenomena possessed sophisticated understanding of human technology and investigative methodology. The beings or forces at work seemed to operate according to rules that allowed for interaction with human observers while maintaining plausible deniability regarding their true nature. Despite these challenges, the NIDS teams did succeed in documenting numerous anomalous events that provided valuable data for analysis. Their reports describe encounters with luminous orbs, sightings of anomalous creatures, electromagnetic phenomena, and various forms of poltergeist-like activity that occurred under controlled observation conditions. One of the most significant documented incidents occurred in August 1997, when Dr. Kelleher and several team members observed what appeared to be a portal or dimensional opening above the ranch property. According to their detailed report, a dark aperture approximately 10 feet in diameter materialized in the air about 30 feet above the ground. The portal remained visible for approximately 20 minutes, during which time the research team was able to observe it through binoculars and document it with photography equipment. Most remarkably, they reported seeing what appeared to be a different landscape visible through the opening, terrain that didn't match the topography surrounding the ranch. During the time the portal was open, several luminous orbs emerged from the aperture and conducted what appeared to be a systematic survey of the ranch property before returning to the opening. The portal then closed, disappearing as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving no physical trace of its presence. This incident was particularly valuable because it was observed by multiple trained investigators simultaneously, documented with various types of equipment, and occurred during daylight hours that allowed for clear observation. The detailed reports produced by the research team provided compelling evidence that the ranch was indeed the site of phenomena that challenged conventional understanding of physics and reality. The NIDS investigation also produced extensive documentation of the ranch's animal mutilation phenomena. Dr. Kelleher worked with veterinary pathologists to conduct systematic necropsies of mutilated animals, producing detailed reports that confirmed the surgical precision and anomalous characteristics that previous investigators had noted. Laboratory analysis of tissue samples from mutilated animals revealed unusual chemical compositions and cellular damage patterns that didn't match known causes of death or injury. Some samples showed evidence of exposure to intense heat, applied with surgical precision, while others contained trace elements that shouldn't have been present in normal bovine tissue. The NIDS teams also documented the apparent intelligence behind the mutilation phenomena, noting that incidents seemed to occur when surveillance efforts were at their lowest levels or when monitoring equipment was experiencing technical difficulties. This pattern suggested that whatever was responsible for the mutilations possessed detailed knowledge of human investigative capabilities and timing. Throughout the investigation period, the NIDS teams maintained detailed logs of all observed phenomena, creating a database of incidents that allowed for pattern analysis and statistical evaluation. This systematic approach revealed correlations between different types of phenomena and identified environmental and temporal factors that seemed to influence the frequency and nature of anomalous events. The data showed that phenomena were more likely to occur during certain weather conditions, particularly during periods of atmospheric instability or unusual electromagnetic activity. Moon phases also appeared to correlate with certain types of incidents, though the correlations were complex and didn't follow simple patterns. Perhaps most significantly, the NIDS investigation revealed that the ranch phenomena appeared to be part of a broader regional pattern of anomalous activity. Similar incidents were documented at locations throughout the Uinta Basin, suggesting that the ranch might be one focal point within a larger area of high strangeness. As the investigation progressed into its middle years, the NIDS teams began to develop theories about the nature of the phenomena they were observing. Some researchers suggested that the ranch might be located at a natural intersection between different dimensional spaces, allowing beings or objects from other realities to manifest in our world. Others proposed that the phenomena might represent some form of consciousness or intelligence that existed in a state that transcended normal physical limitations. This intelligence might be capable of manifesting in various forms, as creatures, as aerial objects, or as poltergeist-like effects, depending on its intentions or the environmental conditions present at any given time. The psychological effects of working at the ranch became an important focus of NIDS research as well. Team members reported various subjective experiences, including feelings of being watched, dreams or visions that seemed related to their work at the ranch, and in some cases, paranormal activity that appeared to follow them to their homes and families. Dr. Kelleher documented his own experiences with what he described as the hitchhiker effect, the apparent tendency for paranormal activity to attach itself to individuals who had spent extended time at the ranch. This phenomenon raised important questions about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the anomalous forces active at the location. By 2004, the NIDS investigation had accumulated an unprecedented database of paranormal phenomena documented under controlled scientific conditions. However, the fundamental questions about the nature and origin of the ranch phenomena remained unanswered. The investigation had succeeded in proving that extraordinary events were indeed occurring at the location, but had not been able to determine what was causing them or how they operated. The conclusion of the formal NIDS investigation marked the end of an era in Skinwalker Ranch research, but it also established a foundation of documented evidence that would influence all subsequent investigations of the property. The scientific rigor and comprehensive documentation provided by the NIDS teams created a legacy of credible research that would continue to shape understanding of the ranch phenomena for years to come. Chapter 10: Government Involvement. The transition of Skinwalker Ranch from private research facility to a focus of United States government interest represents one of the most intriguing chapters in the property's complex history. This evolution from civilian paranormal investigation to classified military research program reveals the extent to which the phenomena documented at the ranch had begun to attract attention at the highest levels of the defense establishment. The pathway that led the Pentagon to Skinwalker Ranch began not with the ranch itself, but with growing concern within the defense community about unidentified aerial phenomena that military personnel were encountering with increasing frequency. Throughout the early 2000s, reports from Navy pilots, Air Force personnel, and other military witnesses described encounters with objects that displayed flight characteristics far beyond the capabilities of any known technology. These military encounters shared many characteristics with the phenomena that had been documented at Skinwalker Ranch during the NIDS investigation. The objects displayed impossible acceleration capabilities, appeared to operate without visible propulsion systems, and demonstrated apparent awareness of human observation and technology. Most concerning from a national security perspective, these encounters were occurring near sensitive military installations and testing facilities. Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, who served as Senate Majority Leader during this period, became aware of these concerns through his relationships with military and intelligence officials. Reid had maintained a long-standing interest in aerospace phenomena and had previously supported various research initiatives related to advanced propulsion concepts and unexplained aerial encounters. Reid's involvement proved crucial because of his position within the Senate leadership and his ability to secure funding for classified research programs. Working with Senators Ted Stevens of Alaska and Daniel E. Inouye of Hawaii, Reid was able to establish a budgetary allocation for investigating what the Defense Intelligence Agency termed anomalous aerospace threats. The resulting program, known as the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program or AWSAP, was established in 2007 with initial funding of $22 million over a 5-year period. The program was administered by the Defense Intelligence Agency and was designed to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena from the perspective of potential national security implications. AWSAP represented a significant departure from previous government approaches to UFO investigation. Unlike earlier programs such as Project Blue Book, which had focused primarily on debunking UFO reports and reassuring the public, AWSAP was established on the premise that unexplained aerial phenomena deserved serious scientific investigation and might represent genuine technological capabilities that could affect national security. The selection of a contractor for the AWSAP program involved a competitive bidding process, but the ultimate choice reflected the unique requirements of the research. The phenomena being investigated fell outside the expertise of traditional defense contractors who specialized in conventional aerospace technology. What was needed was an organization with experience in investigating anomalous phenomena using rigorous scientific methodology. Robert Bigelow's Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, known as BAASS, emerged as the natural choice for the contract. The company possessed several critical advantages: extensive experience investigating unexplained phenomena through the NIDS program, access to the Skinwalker Ranch facility, where similar phenomena had been systematically studied, and a team of researchers with proven track records in applying scientific methodology to anomalous events. The BAASS contract for AWSAP was awarded in August 2008, formalizing the relationship between the United States government and the ongoing investigation at Skinwalker Ranch. Under this arrangement, the ranch became not just a private research facility, but a location where classified government research was being conducted into phenomena that potentially affected national security. The integration of government resources into the ranch investigation brought significant advantages in terms of funding, personnel, and technical capabilities. The BSS teams now had access to classified databases of military UAP encounters, allowing them to compare ranch phenomena with incidents occurring at other locations around the world. Additionally, the government connection provided access to advanced monitoring and analysis technologies that had not been available during the earlier NIDS investigation. Sophisticated sensor arrays, satellite monitoring capabilities, and classified analysis techniques were deployed to study the ranch phenomena with unprecedented precision and scope. Dr. James Lakatsky, a career Defense Intelligence Agency official with advanced degrees in physics and engineering, served as the AWSAP program manager and became deeply involved in the ranch investigations. His background in classified aerospace research provided valuable perspective on evaluating the potential technological significance of the phenomena being observed. Lakatsky's involvement in the ranch research included extended periods of personal observation at the location, where he witnessed many of the same types of phenomena that had been documented during the NIDS period. His reports, while classified, are understood to have confirmed the continuation of anomalous activity and to have provided detailed technical analysis of the events he observed. One of the most significant aspects of the government investigation was the systematic comparison of Skinwalker Ranch phenomena with similar events reported at other locations around the world. The ORSAP database included military encounters from multiple countries, allowing researchers to identify patterns and characteristics that extended far beyond the specific location in Utah. This broader analysis revealed that the phenomena observed at Skinwalker Ranch were not unique to that location, but appeared to be part of a global phenomenon pattern of encounters with unknown aerospace capabilities. The ranch served as a concentrated example of phenomena that were occurring worldwide, providing a controlled environment where these forces could be studied systematically. The government investigation also explored potential connections between the ranch phenomena and advanced physics concepts that might explain the observed capabilities. Research teams investigated theoretical frameworks including extra-dimensional physics, consciousness-mediated phenomena, and exotic propulsion concepts that might account for the seemingly impossible characteristics of the encounters. Perhaps most significantly, the government investigation began to document what researchers termed the contagion effect, the apparent tendency for paranormal phenomena to follow investigators away from the ranch and to manifest in their personal lives and family environments. This effect had been noted during the NIDS investigation, but became a focus of systematic study during the ORSAP period. Multiple government contractors and personnel reported experiencing unexplained phenomena in their homes after spending time at the ranch. These incidents included poltergeist-like activity, apparitions, electronic equipment malfunctions, and encounters with anomalous creatures that seemed to be related to their work at the Utah facility. The hitchhiker effect raised serious concerns about the potential risks associated with investigating the ranch phenomena. If exposure to these forces could result in ongoing paranormal activity that affected investigators and their families, then the research itself might pose unforeseen dangers to personnel involved in the program. Dr. Lakatsky himself reported experiencing the hitchhiker effect, with unusual phenomena manifesting at his residence following his visits to the ranch. These personal experiences provided him with direct insight into the challenges faced by other investigators and reinforced the conclusion that the ranch phenomena represented forces that operated according to principles not yet understood by conventional science. The government investigation also attempted to evaluate potential technological applications of the phenomena being observed. If the objects and entities at the ranch possessed genuine advanced capabilities, there might be opportunities to reverse engineer these technologies for defense applications. However, efforts to capture or contain examples of the phenomena proved unsuccessful. The intelligence apparently governing these forces seemed capable of avoiding any attempts to study them against their will, manifesting only when and how they chose, and disappearing whenever investigators attempted to establish more controlled experimental conditions. This pattern of selective manifestation suggested that the phenomena possessed sophisticated understanding of human intentions and capabilities, allowing them to interact with investigators while maintaining ultimate control over the terms of that interaction. The ORSAP program also conducted extensive research into the historical and cultural context of the ranch phenomena, exploring connections to indigenous traditions, regional folklore, and similar reports from other locations around the world. This anthropological approach provided valuable insights into the long-term patterns of unusual activity in the Uinta Basin and similar regions. Research teams compiled databases of historical accounts, native traditions, and contemporary reports that revealed consistent patterns of anomalous activity extending back centuries. This historical context suggested that the phenomena were not recent developments, but represented ongoing manifestations of forces that had been active in the region for extended periods. The government investigation period also saw increased coordination with international research efforts. Through classified channels, ORSAP researchers shared information with counterparts in other countries who were investigating similar phenomena, creating a global network of government-sponsored research into unexplained aerospace capabilities. This international cooperation revealed that the phenomena observed at Skinwalker Ranch were part of a worldwide pattern of encounters that transcended national boundaries and cultural differences. The consistency of reports from different countries and contexts strengthened the case that genuine unknown phenomena were being observed rather than cultural artifacts or misidentifications of conventional objects. As the initial ORSAP funding period drew to a close in 2012, program administrators faced challenges in demonstrating concrete technological benefits from the research investment. While the investigation had succeeded in documenting and analysing extraordinary phenomena, it had not produced the kind of technological breakthroughs that might justify continued funding from a defence perspective. The classified nature of much of the research also limited the ability of program administrators to share their findings with the broader scientific community, or to generate the kind of peer review that might validate their conclusions. The phenomena being investigated remained as mysterious at the end of the government investigation as they had been at the beginning. However, the ORSAP period did produce extensive documentation of the ranch phenomena from a government perspective, creating classified databases and analytical frameworks that would continue to influence official approaches to unexplained aerial phenomena. The program established precedents for serious government investigation of anomalous events and demonstrated that the defense establishment was prepared to allocate significant resources to understanding potential technological threats from unknown sources. The conclusion of the formal ORSAP program in 2012 did not end government interest in the phenomena documented at Skinwalker Ranch. Elements of the research continued under other classified programs, and the database of encounters and analysis developed during the ORSAP period continued to inform official assessment of unexplained aerial phenomena. The legacy of the government investigation period includes not only the classified research products that emerged from the program, but also the establishment of protocols and methodologies for investigating anomalous phenomena from a national security perspective. The lessons learned at Skinwalker Ranch would influence subsequent government approaches to UAP investigation and would contribute to the gradual emergence of official acknowledgement that unexplained aerial phenomena represent legitimate subjects for serious scientific and security analysis. The transition from government funding back to private research marked another turning point in the ranch's history, but the foundation established during the ORSAP period would continue to influence understanding of the phenomena and approaches to investigating them. The ranch had become not just a location where extraordinary events occurred, but a proving ground where the capabilities and limitations of human scientific methodology were tested against forces that continued to defy explanation. Chapter 11. Theories and Explanations. After decades of investigation, documentation and analysis, the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch continue to resist definitive explanation. The accumulation of evidence has not led to consensus about what forces are responsible for the extraordinary events reported at the location. Instead, the investigation has generated a complex array of theories and proposed explanations that span the spectrum from conventional misidentification to exotic physics and interdimensional manifestations. The challenge of explaining Skinwalker Ranch lies not in the absence of theories, but in the richness and complexity of the phenomena that any successful explanation must address. A comprehensive theory must account for aerial objects that display impossible flight characteristics, creatures that seem to exist outside known biological categories, electromagnetic effects that interfere selectively with electronic equipment, and poltergeist-like phenomena that affect both animate and inanimate objects. Perhaps most significantly, any explanation must address the apparent intelligence and awareness that seems to govern the phenomena. The events at Skinwalker Ranch do not appear to be random, natural occurrences or simple misidentifications of conventional phenomena. Instead, they display patterns of behavior that suggest intentionality, awareness of human activities, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances and investigation methods. The interdimensional hypothesis represents one of the most sophisticated attempts to provide a unified explanation for the ranch phenomena. This theory suggests that Skinwalker Ranch may be located at a natural intersection point between our reality and other dimensional spaces, allowing beings and objects from parallel universes or alternate realities to manifest in our world. Proponents of the interdimensional theory point to several aspects of the ranch phenomena that seem consistent with this explanation. The apparent ability of objects and creatures to appear and disappear instantaneously could reflect transitions between dimensional states. The portal-like openings that multiple witnesses have reported might represent visible manifestations of these dimensional interfaces. The interdimensional hypothesis also offers potential explanations for the seemingly impossible physical characteristics displayed by ranch phenomena. Objects that appear solid but can pass through barriers, creatures that seem immune to physical harm, and the selective nature of electromagnetic effects might all reflect the interaction between beings operating according to different physical laws in our three-dimensional reality. Dr. Eric Davis, who served as a physicist consultant during the NIDS investigation, explored theoretical frameworks from advanced physics that might support interdimensional explanations. His research into concepts such as extra-dimensional spaces, parallel universes, and the mathematical models that describe these theoretical constructs provided scientific context for understanding how such phenomena might manifest in our reality. However, the interdimensional theory faces significant challenges in terms of testable predictions and empirical verification. While the mathematics of higher dimensional physics provides elegant theoretical frameworks, translating these concepts into experimentally verifiable hypotheses remains extremely difficult with current scientific methodology and technology. The consciousness-mediated phenomenon theory represents another approach to explaining the ranch mysteries. This hypothesis suggests that the phenomena might be manifestations of some form of advanced consciousness or intelligence that exists in a state transcending normal physical limitations. According to this theory, the entities responsible for the ranch phenomena might be forms of consciousness that can manipulate matter and energy through direct mental influence, creating physical manifestations that appear to violate natural laws but actually represent the application of consciousness-based capabilities that human science has not yet discovered or understood. The consciousness theory finds support in several aspects of the ranch phenomena, particularly the apparent telepathic communication that some investigators have reported experiencing during close encounters with anomalous objects or entities. The ability of the phenomena to respond to human thoughts and intentions, even when these are not expressed verbally or through obvious physical actions, suggests forms of awareness that operate beyond normal sensory channels. Dr. Hal Puthoff, a physicist who has conducted extensive research into consciousness-related phenomena, has suggested that the ranch might serve as a natural laboratory for studying the interaction between consciousness and physical reality. His work on remote viewing and psychokinetic phenomena provides theoretical frameworks for understanding how consciousness might directly influence material systems. The extraterrestrial hypothesis, while perhaps the most familiar explanation for UFO phenomena in general, presents both strengths and weaknesses when applied specifically to Skinwalker Ranch. The advanced technological capabilities displayed by the aerial phenomena could certainly be consistent with visitation by beings from other worlds possessing scientific knowledge far beyond current human understanding. The systematic nature of some ranch activities, particularly the precision cattle mutilations and the apparent biological sampling that seems to occur, might reflect scientific investigation being conducted by non-human intelligences. The long-term nature of the phenomena, extending across multiple decades, could indicate ongoing research projects or monitoring activities by extraterrestrial visitors. However, the extraterrestrial hypothesis struggles to account for many of the more esoteric aspects of the ranch phenomena. The poltergeist-like effects, the interaction with indigenous spiritual traditions, and the apparent connection to specific geographic locations seem more consistent with interdimensional or consciousness-based explanations than with visits by physical beings from other planets. The ultra-terrestrial hypothesis represents a variation on extraterrestrial explanations that suggests the phenomena might be caused by intelligences that originated on Earth, but have evolved beyond current human understanding. These beings might represent ancient civilizations that achieved technological capabilities far beyond our current level, or they might be non-human intelligences that evolved independently on Earth. This theory finds some support in the apparent familiarity that the ranch phenomena display with Earth environments and human activities. Rather than behaving like visitors from another world who might be unfamiliar with terrestrial conditions, the entities seem to possess intimate knowledge of local geography, wildlife, and human behavior patterns. The ultra-terrestrial hypothesis also offers potential explanations for the connections between ranch phenomena and indigenous spiritual traditions. If these intelligences have been present on Earth for extended periods, they might have interacted with human civilizations throughout history, becoming incorporated into various cultural and spiritual traditions. Government or military explanations for the ranch phenomena have been proposed by some researchers who suggest that the events might result from classified technology testing or psychological operations conducted by intelligence agencies. According to these theories, the ranch might serve as a testing ground for advanced aerospace technologies, or as a location where psychological manipulation techniques are being evaluated. The involvement of government agencies through the AAW-SAP program and the classified nature of some research activities could be seen as supporting evidence for official involvement in creating or manipulating the phenomena. The selective nature of equipment malfunctions and the apparent awareness of investigation techniques might reflect the use of advanced electronic warfare capabilities designed to interfere with civilian monitoring efforts. However, the government explanation faces significant challenges when confronted with the full scope and duration of the ranch phenomena. The events predate the development of most advanced military technologies, extend back to periods when such sophisticated psychological operations would not have been feasible, and involve capabilities that appear to exceed even classified military research. Additionally, the personal involvement of government officials like Dr. Lakatsky, who experienced the phenomena directly and reported being affected by the hitchhiker effect, suggests that government personnel were observers rather than orchestrators of the events. Skeptical explanations for the Skinwalker Ranch phenomena encompass a range of conventional alternatives to paranormal or exotic theories. These explanations typically focus on psychological factors, environmental conditions, and the social dynamics that might contribute to the perception and reporting of anomalous events. Mass hysteria or collective delusion represents one skeptical explanation that suggests the ranch phenomena might result from psychological contagion among individuals who become predisposed to interpret ordinary events as extraordinary. According to this theory, the initial reports from the Sherman family might have established expectations that influenced the perceptions of subsequent observers. The isolated location of the ranch, combined with the stress and anxiety that come from living or working in an environment associated with unexplained phenomena, could create psychological conditions that make individuals more likely to misinterpret natural events or to experience hallucinations and other perceptual distortions. Environmental factors also play a significant role in skeptical explanations. The unique geographical characteristics of the Uinta Basin, including its atmospheric conditions, electromagnetic properties, and geological features, might create natural phenomena that can be mistaken for supernatural events. Temperature inversions, electromagnetic field variations, seismic activity, and other environmental factors could potentially account for some of the reported phenomena without requiring paranormal explanations. The interaction of these natural conditions with human psychology and expectation might amplify ordinary events into perceived anomalies. The fraud or hoax explanation suggests that some or all of the ranch phenomena might result from deliberate deception by individuals with various motivations. These motivations could include financial gain from media attention, psychological needs for attention or notoriety, or deliberate attempts to deceive researchers and investigators. However, the fraud explanation faces significant challenges when applied to the full scope of ranch investigations. The phenomena have been observed by dozens of credible witnesses over multiple decades, including scientists, military personnel, and law enforcement officers with professional stakes in maintaining their credibility. The sophisticated nature of some reported phenomena, particularly the precision cattle mutilations and the complex electromagnetic effects, would require resources and expertise that seem inconsistent with individual hoax attempts. Additionally, the consistency of reports across different time periods and observer groups suggests patterns that would be difficult to maintain through coordinated deception. Natural misidentification represents another category of skeptical explanation that focuses on the tendency for observers to interpret unusual but conventional phenomena as supernatural or anomalous events. Wildlife behavior, atmospheric conditions, aircraft operations, and industrial activities in the region might account for some ranch sightings without requiring extraordinary explanations. The remote location and sparse population of the Uinta Basin mean that observers might be unfamiliar with some types of natural phenomena that are actually normal for the region. Military aircraft testing, oil field operations, and seasonal wildlife migration patterns could potentially account for some reported sightings. However, the misidentification explanation struggles to account for the close-range encounters, the apparent interaction between phenomena and observers, and the systematic nature of many ranch events. The witnesses include individuals with extensive experience in rural environments who would be familiar with normal wildlife, weather, and industrial activities in the region. The combination theory suggests that the ranch phenomena might result from the interaction of multiple factors rather than a single underlying cause. This approach acknowledges that some reports might reflect natural phenomena or misidentification, while others might involve genuine anomalous events that require more exotic explanations. According to this theory, the ranch might serve as a location where various factors converge to create conditions favourable to both ordinary events that can be misinterpreted and genuinely extraordinary phenomena that operate according to unknown principles. The challenge lies in distinguishing between these different categories of events and applying appropriate explanations to each type. The interdisciplinary nature of the ranch phenomena suggests that comprehensive understanding might require insights from multiple fields of knowledge, including physics, psychology, anthropology, biology, and consciousness research. No single theoretical framework seems adequate to address the full complexity of the reported events. As investigations continue and new evidence accumulates, the theoretical landscape surrounding Skinwalker Ranch continues to evolve. Each new observation and analysis adds complexity to the puzzle, rather than pointing towards simple solutions. The ranch remains a place where our current understanding of reality encounters phenomena that challenge fundamental assumptions about what is possible in our world. Chapter 12: The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch Era. The year 2016 marked another significant transition in the long and complex history of Skinwalker Ranch, when Brandon Fugal, a successful real estate developer and technology entrepreneur from Salt Lake City, purchased the property from Robert Bigelow. This acquisition would usher in a new era of investigation that would blend serious scientific research with unprecedented public access through popular media, fundamentally changing how the world understood and interacted with the ranch mysteries. Brandon Fugal brought a unique perspective to ranch ownership that differed significantly from his predecessors. While the Sherman family had been overwhelmed by phenomena they couldn't understand or control, and while Bigelow had approached the ranch as a private research facility operating largely in secrecy, Fugal envisioned a more open and collaborative approach to investigating the mysteries. Fugal's background in real estate development and technology ventures had provided him with experience in managing complex projects and assembling diverse teams of specialists. He also brought substantial financial resources and a business perspective that emphasized measurable results and systematic progress toward clearly defined objectives. However, Fugal's interest in the ranch extended beyond mere business considerations. He had maintained a long-time fascination with unexplained phenomena and had followed the ranch story through various media reports and scientific publications. His decision to purchase the property reflected genuine curiosity about the nature of the phenomena and commitment to applying serious resources toward understanding them. One of Fugel's first major decisions was to maintain continuity with the previous research efforts, while expanding the scope and sophistication of the investigation. He retained key personnel from the Bigelow era, including ranch manager Thomas Winterton, who possessed intimate knowledge of the property and its history of anomalous activity. Fugel also brought in new team members with diverse backgrounds in science, engineering, and investigation. Dr. Travis Taylor, an aerospace engineer and physicist with extensive experience in defense research, joined the team as the lead scientist. His background in advanced aerospace concepts and electromagnetic phenomena provided valuable expertise for analyzing the technical aspects of ranch encounters. The addition of Eric Bard, a computer scientist and data analyst, brought sophisticated information management capabilities to the investigation. Bard's expertise in processing large data sets and identifying patterns in complex information proved crucial for analyzing the accumulated decades of ranch observations and measurements. Perhaps most significantly, Fugel made the decision to partner with the History Channel to document the ongoing investigation through a television series that would provide unprecedented public access to the ranch research. The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch premiered in 2020 and offered viewers detailed glimpses into both the historical phenomena and the current scientific efforts to understand them. This decision to operate in the public eye represented a dramatic departure from the secrecy that had characterized previous investigations. Rather than conducting research behind closed doors, the Fugel team's activities would be documented and broadcast to millions of viewers, creating both opportunities and challenges for the scientific investigation. The television format allowed for detailed documentation of experiments, real-time observation of phenomena, and comprehensive coverage of the analytical processes used to evaluate evidence. Viewers could observe the scientific methodology being applied to ranch investigations, and could witness the challenges faced by researchers attempting to study unpredictable and elusive phenomena. However, the entertainment industry context also raised questions about the potential influence of television production requirements on scientific objectivity. The need to create compelling content for television audiences might potentially affect the design of experiments, the selection of research priorities, or the interpretation of results. Despite these concerns, the television documentation has provided valuable records of contemporary ranch phenomena that supplement and extend the database established during the NIDS and AAW-SAP periods. The cameras have captured various types of anomalous activity, including electromagnetic anomalies, unusual aerial phenomena, and unexplained ground-based events. The Fugel era has been characterized by increasingly sophisticated technological approaches to studying the ranch phenomena. The team has deployed advanced sensor arrays, including high-resolution cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, radiation monitoring equipment, and seismographic sensors that provide continuous monitoring of the property. Drone technology has played a particularly important role in the current investigations, allowing researchers to conduct aerial surveys of areas that might be dangerous or inaccessible to human observers. These unmanned systems have documented various anomalous phenomena and have themselves been affected by whatever forces are active at the ranch. Multiple drone flights have experienced unexplained equipment failures, navigation system malfunctions, and what appears to be directed interference that prevents the aircraft from accessing certain areas of the property. These incidents have been captured on video and provide compelling evidence that the phenomena possess awareness of and ability to interact with modern technology. Ground-penetrating radar and other subsurface investigation techniques have revealed unusual underground structures and anomalies that don't appear on any historical surveys or architectural plans for the property. These discoveries have led to speculation about natural cave systems, buried artifacts, or artificial constructions that might be connected to the surface phenomena. The team has also employed advanced spectroscopic analysis to study light emissions from various types of luminous phenomena observed at the ranch. This research has revealed unusual spectral signatures that don't match known natural or artificial light sources, providing additional evidence that the aerial phenomena represent genuinely anomalous manifestations. One of the most significant developments during the Fugal era has been the systematic investigation of what the team terms the triangle, an area of the property where multiple types of phenomena seem to converge with unusual frequency. This zone has become a focus of intensive study using various scientific instruments and experimental protocols. Electromagnetic measurements in the triangle area have revealed field strength variations that exceed normal background levels by orders of magnitude. These electromagnetic anomalies appear and disappear without apparent external causes and seem to correlate with other types of unusual activity observed in the same area. Temperature variations in the triangle have also been documented, with localized heating and cooling effects that don't correspond to weather conditions, solar heating, or other conventional thermal sources. Infrared imaging has captured these temperature anomalies as they develop and dissipate over time periods ranging from minutes to hours. The team has also investigated reports of unusual gravitational or spatial effects in certain areas of the ranch. Experiments using precision measurement equipment have documented what appear to be localized gravitational anomalies, where the normal rules of physics seem to operate according to different parameters. GPS equipment has malfunctioned in specific areas of the property, providing readings that place the devices in impossible locations or showing position errors that can't be explained by normal satellite reception problems. These navigation anomalies suggest that the local space-time environment might be altered in ways that affect the fundamental measurement systems that modern technology relies upon. The biological effects of exposure to ranch phenomena have received increased attention during the Fugal investigation period. Team members have reported various physiological responses to spending time in certain areas of the property, including changes in heart rate, blood pressure, and neurological function. Medical monitoring of team members has revealed exposure to elevated levels of ionizing radiation in specific areas of the ranch, despite the absence of any known radiation sources. These radiation exposures have raised safety concerns and have led to the implementation of protective protocols for personnel working in affected areas. The psychological effects of ranch exposure have also been systematically studied, with team members undergoing regular psychological evaluations to monitor for changes in mental state, cognitive function, or emotional well-being that might result from their work at the location. The hitchhiker effect that was documented during earlier investigation periods has continued to manifest during the Fugal era. Team members have reported unusual phenomena occurring at their homes and in their personal lives that seem to be connected to their work at the ranch. These incidents have been documented and studied as part of the broader investigation into the nature of the ranch phenomena. The current investigation has also expanded the scope of ranch research to include collaboration with academic institutions and government agencies. Universities have provided access to specialized analytical equipment and expertise, while government connections established during the AABSAP period have continued to provide resources and information sharing opportunities. International collaboration has also increased during this period, with researchers from other countries sharing data and methodologies for investigating similar phenomena at locations around the world. This global perspective has helped establish that Skinwalker Ranch is part of a worldwide pattern of anomalous activity rather than an isolated case. The public accessibility of the current investigation has generated both benefits and challenges for the research program. Media attention has attracted additional resources and expertise to the investigation, with scientists, engineers, and other specialists volunteering their services to help solve the ranch mysteries. However, public attention has also created security and privacy concerns that must be balanced against the benefits of open investigation. The ranch location has become well known, requiring security measures to protect both the research activities and the safety of the investigation team. The television documentation has also created extensive archives of ranch phenomena that provide valuable resources for future analysis. Hours of high-definition video footage, detailed audio recordings, and comprehensive sensor data create an unprecedented database of anomalous phenomena that can be studied using evolving analytical techniques. As the fugal era of investigation continues to evolve, new technologies and methodologies are constantly being applied to the ranch phenomena. Artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques are being used to analyze patterns in the accumulated data, potentially revealing correlations and connections that might not be apparent to human observers. Advanced materials science is being applied to study physical samples recovered from the ranch, using analytical techniques that were not available during earlier investigation periods. These studies continue to reveal unusual properties and compositions that challenge conventional understanding of natural processes. The integration of entertainment media with serious scientific investigation represents a unique approach to studying anomalous phenomena. While this combination creates challenges and complications, it has also demonstrated that public engagement and scientific research can be successfully combined when proper protocols and safeguards are implemented. The secret of Skinwalker Ranch era has brought unprecedented visibility to the ranch phenomena, while maintaining scientific rigor in the investigation approaches. This period has established new standards for transparent paranormal research, and has demonstrated that serious scientific investigation can coexist with public accessibility and media documentation. Chapter 13: Cultural Legacy. In the decades since its emergence as a focal point for unexplained phenomena, Skinwalker Ranch has transcended its origins as a simple agricultural property in rural Utah to become something far more significant in contemporary culture. The ranch has evolved into a symbol, a touchstone for our ongoing fascination with the unknown, and a place where the boundaries between scientific investigation, popular culture, and fundamental questions about reality converge in unique and powerful ways. The cultural impact of Skinwalker Ranch extends far beyond the immediate circle of researchers, investigators, and witnesses who have directly encountered its phenomena. The ranch has become embedded in the broader narrative of how modern society grapples with experiences that challenge conventional understanding, serving as a case study in the intersection between empirical investigation and the enduring human need to find meaning in the mysterious. Within the field of UFO research and paranormal investigation, Skinwalker Ranch occupies a position of unique significance. Unlike many famous UFO cases that center on single dramatic incidents or brief encounters, the ranch represents something rarer and more valuable to researchers, a location where anomalous phenomena occur with sufficient frequency and consistency to allow for systematic study and long-term observation. This characteristic has made the ranch a reference point for understanding how serious scientific methodology can be applied to subjects that have traditionally been dismissed by mainstream academia. The involvement of credentialed scientists, government agencies, and substantial financial resources in studying the ranch phenomena has helped legitimize the broader field of anomalous research and has demonstrated that unexplained events can be investigated using rigorous empirical methods. The ranch has also become a symbol of the evolution in attitudes toward UFO phenomena that has occurred over the past several decades. Where earlier generations of UFO research were often characterized by amateur investigation, speculation, and limited access to sophisticated analytical tools, the Skinwalker Ranch investigations represent a new paradigm that emphasizes professional scientific approaches, advanced technology, and transparent documentation. This transformation has had broader implications for how society approaches unexplained phenomena in general. The ranch investigations have demonstrated that mysterious events can be studied seriously without abandoning scientific rigor, and that the application of proper methodology can yield valuable insights even when definitive explanations remain elusive. The ranch's influence on popular culture has been profound and multifaceted, reaching audiences far beyond those with specific interests in paranormal phenomena. Books, documentaries, television series, podcasts, and online content have brought the ranch story to millions of people around the world, making it one of the most widely known paranormal locations in contemporary culture. This media attention has created both opportunities and challenges for understanding the ranch phenomena. On one hand, widespread public awareness has attracted additional resources, expertise, and attention to the investigation efforts. Scientists, engineers, and other specialists who might not otherwise have encountered the ranch story have become involved in research efforts, bringing diverse perspectives and capabilities to the ongoing investigations. The popular culture penetration has also served an educational function, introducing general audiences to concepts from advanced physics, consciousness research, and interdisciplinary scientific investigation that might otherwise remain confined to academic circles. The ranch story has become a vehicle for exploring complex ideas about the nature of reality, the limitations of current scientific understanding, and the possibilities that might exist beyond the boundaries of conventional knowledge. However, the translation of complex phenomena into entertainment media has also created potential for misunderstanding and oversimplification. The dramatic elements of the ranch story, the mysterious creatures, the impossible aerial phenomena, the apparently supernatural effects, can overshadow the more subtle aspects of the investigation that are actually more scientifically significant. The challenge lies in maintaining accurate representation of the phenomena while making the story accessible and engaging to audiences who may lack technical backgrounds in the relevant scientific disciplines. This balance between accuracy and accessibility has become a central concern for researchers and media producers working with the ranch story. Within the broader context of American folklore and mythology, Skinwalker Ranch has assumed a position that connects contemporary technological culture with much older traditions of mysterious places and unexplained phenomena. The ranch story draws upon archetypal narratives that have appeared in various forms throughout human history. Stories of places where the normal rules don't apply, where contact with otherworldly forces is possible, and where human understanding confronts its limitations. The connection to Native American traditions, while complex and sometimes problematic, has added layers of cultural depth to the ranch narrative that extend beyond simple UFO encounters or cryptid sightings. The incorporation of indigenous perspectives and spiritual concepts has created a more nuanced understanding of the phenomena that acknowledges different ways of interpreting and categorizing unusual experiences. This cultural cross-pollination has highlighted the importance of considering multiple knowledge systems when attempting to understand anomalous phenomena. The ranch story suggests that Western scientific approaches, while valuable, may not be sufficient by themselves to fully comprehend experiences that exist at the intersection of physical and metaphysical reality. The ranch has also become significant within the broader cultural conversation about the relationship between science and mystery in modern life. In an era when technological advancement has seemed to explain away much that was previously mysterious, Skinwalker Ranch represents a reminder that fundamental questions about the nature of reality remain unanswered. The ranch phenomena challenge the assumption that scientific progress inevitably leads to the elimination of mystery and the complete understanding of natural processes. Instead, the investigations have revealed that the application of increasingly sophisticated scientific tools can sometimes deepen rather than resolve fundamental questions about what is possible in our universe. This dynamic has resonated with audiences who may feel that something important is lost when mystery is eliminated from human experience. The ranch story suggests that wonder and scientific investigation can coexist, and that the pursuit of knowledge can be enhanced rather than diminished by encounters with the truly unexplained. The influence of Skinwalker Ranch on the field of consciousness research has been particularly significant, as the phenomena have provided compelling evidence for the potential interaction between human awareness and physical reality. The apparent responsiveness of the ranch phenomena to human observation and intention has attracted the attention of researchers studying the role of consciousness in shaping physical events. The hitchhiker effect in particular has raised profound questions about the nature of human consciousness and its relationship to anomalous phenomena. The apparent ability of exposure to ranch phenomena to create lasting changes in individual experience suggests that consciousness might be more fundamentally connected to physical reality than conventional scientific models typically acknowledge. These consciousness-related aspects of the ranch story have contributed to broader cultural discussions about the nature of human potential, the role of awareness in shaping reality, and the possibilities that might exist beyond the materialistic assumptions that dominate contemporary scientific thinking. The ranch has also served as a focal point for exploring the social and psychological dimensions of encountering the unexplained. The experiences of witnesses, investigators, and media personnel who have spent time at the ranch provide insights into how human beings respond to events that challenge their fundamental assumptions about reality. These psychological and social aspects of the ranch story have broader implications for understanding how societies adapt to new information and experiences that don't fit established categories of knowledge. The ranch investigations have demonstrated both the human capacity for expanding understanding in the face of anomalous evidence and the resistance that can emerge when established worldviews are challenged. The educational impact of the ranch story has been substantial, inspiring interest in science, engineering, and investigation among audiences who might not otherwise have been exposed to these fields. The combination of mystery and rigorous methodology has proven particularly effective at engaging young people and encouraging them to pursue scientific education and careers. Educational institutions have begun incorporating the ranch story into curricula related to scientific methodology, critical thinking, and interdisciplinary research. The investigations provide concrete examples of how complex problems require diverse approaches, and how collaboration between different fields of expertise can yield insights that would not be available through single-discipline approaches. The ranch has also become significant within discussions about the future of scientific investigation and the potential for citizen science participation in research efforts. The public accessibility of much ranch investigation, particularly during the feudal era, has demonstrated new models for conducting research that involve broader public engagement while maintaining scientific rigor. This democratization of scientific investigation has implications that extend far beyond paranormal research, suggesting approaches that could be applied to environmental monitoring, astronomical observation, and other fields where citizen participation could enhance professional research efforts. The international dimensions of the ranch's cultural impact have been significant as well, with the story resonating with audiences around the world who have their own traditions of mysterious places and unexplained phenomena. The ranch has become a focal point for international dialogue about anomalous experiences and has facilitated cross-cultural communication about topics that often remain isolated within specific cultural contexts. Researchers and investigators from many countries have drawn connections between the ranch phenomena and similar reports from their own regions, contributing to a more global understanding of anomalous phenomena and suggesting that the experiences documented at Skinwalker Ranch may be part of worldwide patterns rather than isolated local events. The technological legacy of the ranch investigations has also had broader cultural implications, as the sophisticated monitoring and analysis techniques developed for studying the phenomena have found applications in other fields. The integration of multiple sensor systems, the development of protocols for documenting unpredictable events, and the creation of databases for analyzing complex phenomena have contributed to advances in scientific methodology that extend beyond paranormal research. Perhaps most significantly, Skinwalker Ranch has become a cultural symbol for the proposition that reality may be far stranger and more complex than our current understanding suggests. In an age when scientific materialism often assumes that the fundamental nature of reality is well understood, The ranch phenomena serve as a reminder that major mysteries may still await discovery. The ranch story suggests that the universe may contain forms of intelligence, consciousness, and physical processes that operate according to principles not yet incorporated into human knowledge systems. This possibility has profound implications for how we understand our place in the cosmos and our potential for continued discovery and expansion of awareness. As the ranch investigations continue to evolve, and as public awareness of the phenomena continues to grow, the cultural legacy of Skinwalker Ranch will likely continue to expand and deepen. The location has established itself as more than just a place where strange things happen. It has become a symbol for the ongoing human quest to understand the unknown, and a reminder that mystery and wonder remain essential elements of the human experience. The ranch represents a unique convergence of scientific investigation, cultural narrative, and fundamental questions about the nature of reality that continues to influence how we think about the boundaries of human knowledge and the possibilities that may exist beyond our current understanding of what is possible in our world. Chapter 14. Closing Reflections. As our journey through the mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch draws to a close, we find ourselves in a place that feels both familiar and utterly transformed. We began this exploration in the high desert of northeastern Utah, among the sagebrush and red rock formations of the Uinta Basin, and we end in the same geographic location. Yet the landscape we now understand extends far beyond the physical boundaries of 512 acres of ranch land. Through decades of investigation, documentation, and analysis, Skinwalker Ranch has revealed itself to be more than a location where strange things happen. It has become a window into questions that reach to the very heart of human experience. What is the nature of reality? How much do we truly understand about the universe we inhabit? And what lies beyond the boundaries of our current knowledge and perception? The human stories that have emerged from this place remind us that behind every investigation, every scientific study, and every documented phenomenon are real people whose lives have been touched, changed, and sometimes transformed by encounters with the inexplicable. The Sherman family, who simply wanted to build a successful ranching operation, instead found themselves confronted with experiences that challenged everything they thought they knew about the world. Terry and Gwen Sherman were practical people, grounded in the realities of agricultural life, accustomed to the rhythms of seasonal change and the challenges of making a living from the land. Yet their time at the ranch introduced them to a reality where the familiar became strange, where the safe became threatening, and where the predictable gave way to the impossible. Their experience speaks to something fundamental about the human condition, our need for stability, predictability, and understanding in our environment. When that foundation is shaken by encounters with the genuinely unexplained, the psychological impact can be profound and lasting. The Sherman family's ultimate decision to leave the ranch reflected not just practical concerns about their safety and economic well-being, but also the deep human need to live in a world that makes sense. Yet their willingness to share their story, despite the personal cost and the skepticism they faced, demonstrates another fundamental human characteristic: the courage to speak truth about experiences that others might find difficult to believe or accept. Their testimony became the foundation upon which decades of subsequent investigation would be built. The scientists and researchers who followed brought their own human qualities to the ranch investigation. Dr. Colm Kelleher, Dr. Eric Davis, Dr. James Lakatsky, and the many others who dedicated years of their professional lives to studying the ranch phenomena displayed the curiosity, persistence, and intellectual courage that drive all meaningful scientific inquiry. These investigators faced unique challenges that extended far beyond the typical difficulties of scientific research. They were attempting to study phenomena that seemed to possess intelligence and awareness, that appeared to respond to investigation efforts by becoming more elusive, and that challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which their scientific training was based. The personal cost of this work became evident in the reports of the hitchhiker effect. where researchers found that their exposure to the ranch phenomena created lasting changes in their own lives and the lives of their families. This aspect of the ranch mystery suggests that some forms of investigation carry risks and consequences that extend far beyond the professional realm. Yet these researchers persevered, driven by the conviction that understanding the ranch phenomena might lead to broader insights about the nature of consciousness, reality, and human potential. Their work represents science at its best, the willingness to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when that path leads into territory that challenges established paradigms and comfortable assumptions. The ranch also tells us something important about the relationship between human beings and the places they inhabit. Indigenous traditions have long recognized that certain locations possess qualities that set them apart from ordinary terrain, that some places serve as interfaces between the everyday world and realities that exist beyond normal perception. The Ute people who lived in the Uinta Basin for centuries understood the landscape in ways that acknowledged both its physical characteristics and its spiritual dimensions. Their tradition spoke of places where the boundaries between worlds became permeable, where encounters with non-ordinary reality were possible, and where human beings needed to approach with respect and caution. This indigenous wisdom provides important context for understanding the ranch phenomena, suggesting that what appears supernatural or anomalous to contemporary scientific investigation might actually represent natural aspects of certain locations that have been recognized and understood by other knowledge systems for extended periods. The ranch story also illuminates the complex relationship between human consciousness and physical reality. The apparent responsiveness of the phenomena to human presence and intention raises profound questions about the role that awareness and observation play in shaping the events we experience. If consciousness does indeed influence physical reality in ways that conventional science has not yet recognized, then the ranch phenomena might represent glimpses into forms of interaction between mind and matter that could revolutionize our understanding of both human potential and the fundamental nature of the universe. The technological dimensions of the ranch investigation demonstrate both the power and the limitations of our current scientific instruments and methodologies. Advanced monitoring equipment, sophisticated analytical techniques, and systematic documentation have succeeded in confirming that extraordinary phenomena do indeed occur at the ranch. Yet the same technology that can detect electromagnetic anomalies, document thermal variations, and record unusual light emissions has been unable to provide definitive explanations for what causes these phenomena or how they operate. This limitation suggests that understanding the ranch mysteries may require not just better technology, but fundamentally new approaches to scientific investigation. The ranch investigations have also revealed the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration in addressing complex mysteries. No single field of study possesses all the tools and perspectives necessary to understand phenomena that span physical science, psychology, anthropology, and consciousness research. The most valuable insights have emerged when researchers from different disciplines have worked together, combining their expertise to create more comprehensive understanding than any individual approach could achieve. This collaborative model has implications that extend far beyond paranormal research, suggesting approaches that could benefit many fields of scientific inquiry. Perhaps most importantly, the ranch story reminds us that mystery and wonder remain essential elements of human experience. In an age when technology and scientific knowledge can sometimes seem to have explained away all the magic and mystery from the world, places like Skinwalker Ranch serve as reminders that profound questions remain unanswered. The phenomena challenge us to remain open to possibilities we haven't yet imagined, to maintain humility about the extent of our current understanding, and to preserve a sense of wonder about the universe we inhabit. They suggest that reality may be far richer, stranger, and more amazing than even our most advanced scientific theories currently acknowledge. The ranch also teaches us about the importance of approaching the unknown with both rigor and respect. The most valuable investigations have been those that combined careful, scientific methodology with openness to possibilities beyond current paradigms. This balance between skepticism and openness, between critical analysis and wonder, represents an ideal that could benefit many areas of human inquiry. As we reflect on the decades of investigation, documentation, and analysis that have occurred at Skinwalker Ranch, we're left not with definitive answers, but with better questions. What is the relationship between consciousness and physical reality? How much do we actually understand about the nature of space, time, and matter? What forms of intelligence might exist beyond human awareness? These questions connect the ranch story to the broader human quest for understanding that has driven exploration, scientific investigation, and philosophical inquiry throughout history. The ranch represents a contemporary frontier where this ancient quest encounters phenomena that suggest how much we still have to learn. The ongoing nature of the ranch phenomena ensures that this story will continue to evolve. New investigations will add to the database of documented events, new technologies will provide additional analytical capabilities, and new theoretical frameworks will offer fresh perspectives on the accumulated evidence. Future researchers may discover explanations that current science cannot provide, or they may find that the phenomena represent aspects of reality that require entirely new categories of understanding. Either outcome would represent significant advancement in human knowledge and awareness. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, let your mind wander across the vast landscape we've explored together. Picture the high desert country of northeastern Utah, where the winter mountains rise against the horizon and the sagebrush stretches toward endless skies. Imagine the play of light and shadow across red rock formations, the quiet whisper of wind through juniper trees, and the profound silence that characterizes this remote corner of the world. In this landscape, where the ordinary intersects with the extraordinary, where indigenous wisdom meets scientific investigation, and where human courage confronts the unknown, we find reflections of our own relationship with mystery and wonder. The ranch phenomena remind us that we live in a universe that remains largely unexplored, where new discoveries await those willing to venture beyond the boundaries of the familiar. Whether the mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch will eventually yield to human understanding, or whether they will continue to serve as reminders of the limits of our current knowledge, they have already provided valuable gifts. The reminder that wonder still exists in our world, that genuine mysteries remain to be explored, and that the quest for understanding connects us to something larger than ourselves. Let your breathing find its natural rhythm as you allow these thoughts to settle gently in your awareness. The stories we've shared tonight are part of the larger human story of exploration, discovery, and the endless quest to understand our place in the cosmos. In the quiet darkness, surrounded by the vast mystery of existence itself, you can rest in the knowledge that the universe remains a place of wonder and possibility. The same stars that shine over Skinwalker Ranch shine over your resting place tonight, connecting you to the ongoing human journey of discovery and understanding. Let the mysteries we've explored together fade gently into the background as you allow sleep to carry you into your own landscape of dreams and rest. In the morning, the questions will remain, the investigations will continue, and the human quest for understanding will go on. But for now, in this peaceful moment, you can simply rest in the wonder of it all. Sleep well, and dream of horizons yet to be explored, mysteries yet to be understood, and the infinite possibilities that await in the vast, strange, and wonderful universe we call home.